Chapter 673. Yorko suddenly sighed in his heart. Damn it, didn't we agree not to see each other again? It was just a polite saying to find the ambassador if there was trouble. Don't take it seriously. He looked at Otto and hesitated for a while before saying, bring her in. If the sponsor of the exhibition was not here, he would have directly used the excuse that the ambassador was not in the mansion at the moment and asked her to come again. Number 76 quickly took her hand and walked into the room. It was Amy, the 10th item of the black money auction. The witch anxiously grabbed Yorko's arm as soon as she saw him. Sir, please help us. Annie and the others are in danger. In danger? This was probably the most difficult kind of help. Sit down and tell me what happened. He patted her shoulder and said, what happened? Our hiding place has been discovered. Amy took a few breaths and said intermittently, a large number of way patrols surrounded the orphanage and blocked the nearby streets. I saw more than one team of knights, searching for witches street by street. The others are still trapped inside. I beg you to save them. Are there other witches besides you and Annie? There are also Hero and Broken Sword. Hero has lost her legs and can only be carried by Annie. It's troublesome enough to hide one, but there are 4? He sucked in a breath of cold air. How did you escape? The food in the house is running out, so I went to buy some food nearby. When I came back, I found them everywhere. She sounded like she was about to cry. Yorko was in a dilemma. The ambassador of Grey Castle was just an empty title without any real power. How could he stop those patrols? Moreover, this arrest was ordered by the King of Dawn. He had just defended the king in the palace. If he stood up to protect the witches now, the result would probably be more than just banishment from the palace. Don't worry, they'll be fine. Number 76 comforted Amy while stroking her back. Sir Yorko must have a way to bring them back safely. No way. Everything will be fine if they listen to me and submit to His Majesty as soon as possible. What about Mr. Hill? Otto asked. I don't know. He never reports to me about his actions, and I often don't see him for a long time. Yorko frowned. If you want to see him, I'm afraid you'll have to wait until after dinner. How about this? I'll go find Earl Quinn first. He's the king's prime minister and is in charge of the patrols. Maybe he can give them a chance to escape. Wait, he will listen to you? I don't know, but I have to try. Otto showed a complicated look. Do you remember the witch friend I told you about? Her name is Andrea Quinn, and she is Earl Quinn's biological daughter. As time passed, Yorko could do nothing but stand by the window and look into the distance. Number 76 showed her amazing ability to comfort Amy. She coaxed the frightened Amy to sleep on the bench. It could be seen that this guy had been running all the way and was too anxious, so he was very tired. But even so, to be able to fall asleep in such a place, it could only be said that she was indeed too trusting of others. In the evening, Hillfox finally returned to the ambassador's residence. Where have you been? Yorko found 3 people following him as soon as he asked. No, to be exact, there were 2.5 people. One of them was half a head taller than Hill, with some blood on her face and a vigilant look in her bright eyes. It was Annie who had sneaked into black money to save Hill. She was carrying a purple-haired woman on her back. The woman was tied to Annie by 2 belts from her waist to her shoulders, probably for the convenience of movement. Based on the empty trouser legs, she should be the hero who had lost her legs. The last person was about the same height as number 76. Her shoulder-length hair was almost silver, and she looked a little listless. She was holding her waist and swaying as if she had been seriously injured. You all escaped. That's great. Amy, who was awakened by the noise, was stunned at first, and then she threw herself into Annie's arms excitedly. Was anyone hurt by the night? I'm okay, only broken sword. Her magic power is a little exhausted. I was so worried about you. Amy finally could not hold back her emotions and sobbed softly. Sister Annie is here. Don't be afraid. Hero comforted her. How did you meet them? Yorko opened his mouth wide. It's a long story. They have to leave here as soon as possible. Hill grabbed the ambassador's hand and led him to the bedroom alone. Listen, before the city gate closes, you have to leave the city of Glow tonight. I've already prepared 5 carriages, a total of 5. The first 2 are for transporting wheat and fruits, and the last 3 are for transporting people. Wait a minute, Yorko interrupted. Did you just say? No? It's you and the witches, not me, Hill said word by word. In order not to hinder His Majesty's plan, we can't lose the news of the Kingdom of Dawn. But I'm the ambassador. You have to leave because you're the ambassador. Hill's voice became more and more steady at times like this. Listen, I didn't save these 3 witches. What? Yorko could not help but be stunned. Not you? I've set up spies around the knight's martial arts field. If you can't find the witches, you might as well see how the opponents find them. So I received the news as soon as they moved out. But when they arrived, the block had been surrounded, and only the Blackstreet rats could enter. So you bribed the rats? Since I arrived in the Kingdom of Dawn, I've been keeping in touch with the local rats. Although it costs me a lot, it can always be useful at critical moments. Hill said in a low voice, but when I used the rats I bribed to track them down, the 3 witches had already escaped the encirclement. Isn't that good? I'll ask Denise to send them away and pretend that nothing happened. But it's not normal. Hill shook his head. The King of Dawn obviously knows exactly where the witches are hiding, and the people he mobilized are enough to turn the besieged block upside down. How did they escape? There's only one explanation. The witches were deliberately released. Perhaps Appin wants to use this method to catch more witches in hiding. Or find out the people who support the witches. Yorko swallowed hard. If that's the case, it's too dangerous for you to stay in the City of Glow. The safest choice is to leave as soon as possible. Hill continued, if you can bring back 4 witches for His Majesty, the credit will be much more than an ambassador's position. What about you? He hesitated. If you're caught. They can only catch a famous person, but I'm a nameless person hiding in the dark. In their eyes, I don't exist at all. Hill chuckled. No one will notice that a guard is missing from the team of ambassadors, and Lord Otto will cover for me. Do you remember what I mentioned to you? I'm just an ordinary acrobat. The next time you come to the Kingdom of Dawn with His Majesty, you may see a brand new acrobatic troupe in this prosperous City of Glow. Chapter 674. In the end, Yorko listened to Hill's advice and left the City of Glow in a carriage under the setting sun. The coachmen were all Hill's subordinates. Yorko heard that they used to be part of the acrobatic troupe. After following the caravan to transport slaves for several times, they were very confident about the evacuation route. The carriages did not slow down until the sun had completely set. However, even though the land was shrouded in darkness, they persisted in carrying oil lamps for more than 2 hours before pitching a camp in a desolate field. The carriages formed a circle around the bonfire. The young man who called himself Clown was skillfully fetching water to cook porridge, while the tall and muscular Rock Mountain was feeding the horses. There was also Magician, who was in charge of security and patrolling, and the Com brothers, who were setting up simple traps. Rather than calling them an acrobatic troupe, they were more like an army. Yorko found that he did not need to do anything, and the fragrant oatmeal had already been handed to him. In addition, there was also a plate of bacon and an apple. He finally knew why Hill chose to transport these things. These so-called goods for sale were enough to meet the needs of all the witches even if they had to spend 1 or 2 months on the road. However, since he could load the food so quickly, could he have been ready to escape the Kingdom of Dawn at any time? And according to the guard, he still kept in touch with the Blackstreet rat. My God, is this guy really just an acrobat? Yorko decided to ask his old friend when he returned to Grey Castle. The coachman consciously carried the oatmeal to the periphery of the carriage, leaving only Yorko, number 76, and the 4 witches around the bonfire. I'm sorry for what I said and did last time, Annie said generously. You didn't hand us over to the King of Dawn, but I still can't completely trust you. But Amy was puzzled. He doesn't look like a bad guy. Yorko blushed a little when he heard that Annie was not a bad guy. He had never thought of himself as a good guy. Fortunately, the light of the bonfire could cover it up for him. Ahem, I think it's probably because Miss Annie still doubts the purity of the witch organization in Grey Castle. Purity? For example, some powerful nobles often secretly raise a few witches for their own amusement. That's just one aspect, Annie interrupted. As long as there's a one-sided deception and exploitation, no matter in the kingdom of Wolfheart or in Grey Castle, it's still a cage for witches. There's no essential difference. Of course, if I can prove that the witch organization in Grey Castle is really as you said, I will formally apologize to you. It doesn't matter. Yurko shrugged. My task is to send you to His Majesty. After that, it has nothing to do with me. Even if you want to apologize, you might not be able to see me. The atmosphere at the scene was a little stiff, and only the crackling of the bonfire could be heard. Normally, he would never allow the conversation to descend into an impasse. However, when it came to this group of witches, he really couldn't get excited. Not only had they disrupted his peaceful life as an ambassador, but they had also brought a lot of risks to the emissary mission. It was not wrong to be cautious, but when the person being suspected was himself, this kind of feeling was not so easy to get over. The last one to break the silence was number 76. Are you all from the kingdom of Wolfheart? She asked. I heard from Amy that you've known each other for a long time. Annie nodded. Although we weren't born in the same city, but you're right. The kingdom of Wolfheart has been annexed by the church. You must have experienced a lot of hardships on your way to the kingdom of Dawn. Number 76 leaned over and touched the empty trouser leg of Hero. She lowered her voice and asked, was her leg also injured by the people of the church during the escape? Hero bit his lips, revealed a sad expression, and lowered his head. It was cut off by the person she was guarding. Annie's answer was unexpected. At the most critical moment of the kingdom of Wolfheart, she stood up, but in the end, she was hated by the people. Injured? By the person she was guarding? Annie nodded. If you want to know, I can tell you, but it's not a relaxing story. Number 76 looked at Hero for a moment and replied seriously, I want to know. Although Yorko pretended to be focused on eating the bacon, his curiosity was aroused. A year ago, when the army of the church attacked the kingdom of Wolfheart, they threw a large number of corpses with demonic plague into the city, trying to weaken the resistance of the king's city, just like what they did in the Broken Tooth Castle. Annie threw 2 branches into the bonfire, which splashed some sparks. But this time, the demonic plague didn't spread, and it was because of Hero's ability. She could transfer the disease to other living creatures, and thus prevented the spread of the plague. What kind of living creatures? Mice, cats, dogs, cows, sheep, and of course, humans. She said slowly, the citizens dug a big pit in the slums, and the infected people would gather there. Hero transferred the disease to the animals, and then threw the animals into the pit and burned them. Gradually, people regarded her as the savior of the kingdom of Wolfheart and began to call her Hero. Amy and I also received treatment from her. But the good times didn't last long. A large animal could help 5 or 6 infected people recover before it died, while cats and dogs could only accept the transfer of 1 or 2 people. In addition, the demonic plague was repeatedly spread by the church. Even if the citizens of the kingdom of Wolfheart caught all the living creatures that could run and burn them in front of the big pit in the slums, they still couldn't meet the needs of every patient. As the war continued, they turned their attention to the living. This sentence made Yorko shudder with fear. Number 76 moved to Hero's side and gently held her in her arms. It's not your fault. Annie's expression was particularly solemn in the flickering light of the fire. Of course it's not her fault. From the beginning, those people didn't give her the right to choose. The first people to be thrown into the pit were criminals, prisoners, and volunteers, and then the elderly, injured soldiers, and captives of the Judgment Army. But Hero didn't agree to the demands of those madmen, especially the soldiers who didn't want to die and the underage people who surrendered. She was unwilling to do anything. So people's attitude towards her changed, and there were even rumors that she colluded with the church. She was obviously the enemy, but she wanted to save their lives. The savior became a traitor, and Hero was also imprisoned. If it wasn't for the need to use her ability, she would have been sent to the gallows. After that, the church made a comeback, and it only took them one day to break through the city wall of the king's city. When the city was breached, the watchman who had been treated by her chopped off her legs with an axe, and then set the prison on fire. He also said that it was because of Hero's collusion with the church that the kingdom of Wolfheart was destroyed. She couldn't go anywhere. The traitor should be destroyed together with the city in this fire cage. Chapter 675. How could the believers of the church save a witch? Yorko unconsciously put down the bacon and focused all his attention on Annie. They broke out of the cage with Hero. Later, under the cover of these captives, she escaped the search of the church. After the war, the surviving Judgment warriors even sent her food and clothes for a period of time. They didn't bid farewell to Hero until the army returned to Hermes. Before leaving, all the Judgment warriors who had stayed in that cage came to express their gratitude to her. Yorko frowned. But the title of hero will it be? She is hero, Annie said firmly. No matter how the people who were cured by her think of her, she saved tens of thousands of people in Wolfheart City, as well as my and Amy's lives. She is fully deserving of this title. The ambassador couldn't help but sigh. It turned out that the pain that this group of witches had suffered was much more cruel than he had imagined. If he were to be treated like this, not to mention trusting ordinary people, even if he saw everyone as an enemy, it would be normal for him to want to kill them all. The unhappiness of being suspected by Annie gradually dissipated. Her leg may have a chance to recover. What? Are you telling the truth? What should we do? Everyone turned to look at Yorko, including Hero. She looked like she was only 18 or 19 years old. Even though she had been ravaged by the war, her eyes were still full of expectation instead of numbness and blankness. Ahem, I'm not sure. Yorko rubbed his nose. Hill once mentioned that there might be more than 300 witches gathered in Grey Castle, and the power of the devil. No, I mean abilities are always strange, right? Maybe someone can regrow a severed limb or simply make a new one for her. 300? Number 76 was surprised. How did the king of Grey Castle recruit so many witches? It's a long story. My old friend is a born king. He has long seen through the tricks of the church. Not only did he stipulate that witches could live like ordinary people in his territory, but he also spread the idea that witches were innocent to all parts of Grey Castle. After a long time, there will naturally be many witches who will join his command and work for him. Yorko took the opportunity to flatter His Majesty. So you don't have to worry about your future at all. His Majesty's city of Neverwinter claims that everyone can find a suitable job, including witches. What kind of job? Amy's eyes were shining. How would I know? I've never been to Neverwinter. Well, of course it depends on what kind of ability you have. For example, if you can control fire, you can be a blacksmith or a whirlwind or a mill or a windmill or something like that. Yorko fabricated. Anyway, His Majesty plans to build a new king's city in the western region and needs a lot of manpower. Even if your ability can't be used, you can still work like ordinary people. It does sound good. Annie gave AI me a look, but lies are always better than reality. Right now I know. You can't trust me completely, can you? Yorko spread out his hands and said, when the time comes, just trust your own eyes. When Wolfheart City was conquered, I happened to be staying at Amy's house. I noticed the strange behavior of the Judgment Army, so I followed them and found Hero. Annie fiddled with the bonfire and said, it was several months later that I met Duan Ren. She was caught by the church believers stationed there and was going to be escorted to the Holy City. I happened to stay at Amy's house when Wolfheart City was conquered. I noticed the strange behavior of the Judgment Army, so I followed them and found Hero, Annie said while fiddling with the bonfire. It was several months later that I met Duan Ren. She was caught by the church believers stationed there and was going to be escorted to the Holy City. Were you alone? If I had enough time to prepare, killing a group of people is not much more difficult than killing animals. Annie said calmly. But after that ambush, the church's search for Wolfheart City increased several times. We couldn't hide anymore, so we mingled with the refugees and left Wolfheart City. Finally, we went all the way south and lived in an orphanage in the City of Glow. What an incredible escape, number 76 exclaimed. And it's not over yet, Yorko thought. Although the Kingdom of Dawn is not as terrible as the church, it is still more than enough to crush us. He hoped that Hill's worries were not true. Otherwise, App and Moya would never let them go. As long as they were still in the territory of the Kingdom of Dawn, they could not be considered safe. He shook his head and put these annoying thoughts behind him. Go to bed early after dinner. We have to continue our journey tomorrow morning. The rest of the escape was unexpectedly smooth. Under the magician's plan, they went to the suburbs and did not enter the city. 5 days later, they arrived at Windward Ridge in the Kingdom of Dawn. After another day's journey south, they would enter the northern region of Grey Castle. Yorko also relaxed a little. After all, it was not a good feeling to be tense all the way. Every night he would wake up with a start at the slightest noise. Number 76 was much calmer than him. She not only took care of the witches but also took care of himself. After a few days, she had become quite familiar with the witches, especially Amy, who was gullible. She almost regarded number 76 as her fourth sister. Yorko leaned against the cushion and looked out of the window at the rolling hills and withered fields. He could not help humming a tune in his heart. His ambassador position was ruined, but at least he brought back 4 witches for his old friend. If what Hill said was right, what kind of reward would His Majesty give him? Just as he was full of expectation and daydreaming, the magician who was in charge of guarding suddenly caught up from the back of the convoy. Sir, we may be in trouble. Someone seems to be following us. What? Yorko was shocked and quickly stuck his head out of the window, but he did not find anything unusual. Those people are night. They are about 7 or 8 miles away from us. You can't see them. The magician controlled the horse under him to keep its body parallel to the carriage. They're not moving fast, but we're slower. At this rate, they'll find us sooner or later and catch up with us. Are you sure they're enemies? I'm not sure. I just saw them from a distance. But we can't bet on this chance. There are about 20 to 30 of them. They're fully armored and don't have any horses. They must have found us by following the ruts. Then what should we do? Yorko panicked. We have to abandon the carriage and walk. There's a dense forest nearby. Horses can't pass through there, so the knight can't show his full speed. The magician said in a low voice, but this will only slow us down to the same level as them. Once they catch up with us, we'll all die. To be foolproof, it's best to lead the convoy forward and attract them to the main road. Chapter 676. The carriages stopped by the roadside. The Chom brothers were busy tying the carriages together so that they could be driven by one person. After a fierce argument, the witches were finally persuaded by Annie to follow the clown into the woods. Soon, it was Yorko's and the rest's turn. Sir, it's time for us to go. Rock Mountain passed by him with a bag of food on his back. Otherwise, all our efforts will be in vain if the enemy notices us. Later, I want to say a few more words to her. He thought it would take a long time to make a decision, but it only took him less than a quarter of an hour to decide. The person who stood out was number 76. Although Rock Mountain and Annie also expressed their willingness to stay, Yorko finally chose her as the nominal leader of the team. I've received 5 years of combat training in the Black Money, so I can run fast. Don't worry about me too much. Number 76's speech was very simple as an ordinary farewell. Isn't there a village in front of us? When I drive the carriages there and blend in with the villagers, they will never find me. When the storm is over, I'll meet you at the border city of Grey Castle. Remember to wait for me there. However, the answer that the magician secretly told him was that the village was 30 miles away, and it was almost impossible for the people who stayed behind to reach there before the night. Moreover, after the carriages were connected, the speed of the journey would be greatly reduced, which made the chance even slimmer. If the pursuers were not following the order of the King of Dawn to capture the witches, then everything would be a false alarm. However, if the pursuers were as the magician worried, Yorko could imagine how the deceived knight would vent his anger on number 76 even with his eyes closed. He faintly realized that if the convoy was intercepted by the Knight Regiment of King City, he would be the only one who could survive. Apen Moya might ask for a large ransom from Roland and ridicule him as the laughingstock of the nobles, but he would not easily send him to the guillotine. Apart from him, the others would basically die if they were caught. Perhaps he was the one who should stay behind to attract the pursuers' attention. Yorko had wanted to stand out several times, but his fear made him unable to move his feet. Until the end, he had not been able to say those words. The ambassador is the face of the king. I can't be taken back to be ridiculed and insulted, because that would be equivalent to insulting the king of Grey Castle. He could only comfort himself in this way. If he did not think so, he could not even look into number 70's eyes. Damn it, she was clearly just a slave that he had bought. Yorko walked up to 76 and was about to say something, but she spoke first. Sir, this is my own choice. It has nothing to do with black money. Although Silver Mask always taught us to be ready to sacrifice for black money, I don't like it at all. I thought I would stay underground for the rest of my life, trying to please the customers, and when I grew old, I would become the new Silver Mask, or I would be sent to work as a laborer, never to see the light of day again. But you took me away from that place and allowed me to experience the vast world outside. I have no regrets. Hurry up and enter the forest, or it will be too late. But, thank you, sir. Number 76 smiled. Without your words, I might have been beaten to death in the underground karst cave. My life belongs to you, and I may not be in danger. If there is a chance, let's meet again in Grey Castle. Sir, we have to go, Brother Com urged him from behind. Yorko took a deep breath and turned to leave. Yes, she was just a slave. This was the most appropriate choice. Although he thought so, his heart seemed to be blocked. Before entering the forest, Yorko turned his head for the last time and saw that number 76 had driven the caravan forward slowly. She did not stop or wave goodbye, as if it was just a simple farewell. Just like the reason why she stood out. Soon, the shadows of the trees blocked his sight. Number 76 did not let the caravan go all the way. After about a mile, she stopped the horse. She could not see the entrance to the forest anymore. She jumped off the horse and sat at the end of the carriage, quietly waiting for the pursuers to come. Sitting for a long time might be a long time, but it was just a moment for her. In the long years, she had no lack of time, so waiting had become a habit. When the sun gradually set in the west, the figures of the knight appeared at the end of the road. They did not wear the emblem and colorful satin of the Knight Regiment of King City, but their exquisite armor and tall horses showed that the pursuers did come from the big city. Number 76 silently counted the number of the pursuers. There were 35 people in total, half of whom were squires. But from their eyes and behavior, it could be seen that these squires were much worse than the knight in the small city. Seeing the carriage stopped by the road, the leader frowned. He flicked his whip in the air, and the knight immediately swarmed up and surrounded the caravan. Sir Logan, there is no one in the carriage. Interesting. It seems that our ambassador of Grey Castle has sent out scouts. Logan sneered. Caro, Chester, you two go back and check the footprints on both sides of the road. Since they abandoned the carriage and fled, it is impossible to leave no traces. This sentence had already explained their purpose for coming. Sir, this woman. Cut off her hands and feet and interrogate her. But since she dared to stay here, you won't be able to get anything out of her. No need, they escaped to the forest. Number 76 stood up and said, It's not far behind you. But what? A knight had already pulled out his sword and reached for her arm with his other free hand. Obviously, even if she told them the answer, they would not let her go. But you won't have the chance to trouble the witches anymore. Number 76 raised her hand and grabbed the knight's wrist with the speed of lightning. Then she pulled hard, and the burly knight flew into her arms like a child. His head was tucked under her armpit. The shoulders closed slightly, and the armor made a creaking sound that made one's teeth ache. Then, with a snap, The helmet left its original position, leaving a distance of about a fist's width between it and the collar armor at the neck. The knight convulsed like a dehydrated fish. "Let go of Charlie. Damn it, kill her." The others all pulled out their swords and stabbed her. Chapter 677. The blade cut through the armor neatly. Blood splashed out from the gap like tiny red lines. Unexpectedly, the victim did not scream. Instead, he clenched his teeth and grabbed her hand that was holding the sword, as if he wanted to fight for a chance for his companion. Unfortunately, he ignored the huge gap in strength between them. Number 76 easily broke free from his grip. She pulled out her sword and kicked him away at the same time. The place where the knight was kicked deflated as if he had been hit by a blunt weapon. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground without making a sound. It seemed that her fists and feet were more convenient. Number 76 glanced at the sword that was full of cracks after only one blow. She simply threw it aside and pounced on the others with her bare hands. The hunter became the prey in an instant. She leaped high and moved quickly on the shoulders of the clumsy knight. Every time she landed on the head of a person, she would clamp the helmet with her feet and rotate her body with inertia. The crisp sound of cervical vertebrae breaking could be heard. Before the person fell, she had already kicked away and leaped to the next enemy. Compared with number 70's light movements, the knight's counterattack and evasion were no different from that of a wooden stake. It was not a big deal if she did not land on the enemy's head. It was very easy for her to strike the enemy's joints to make him lose his balance and then give a fatal kick. Or she could lure the enemy and let them attack her teammates from the front and back. This is impossible. Damn monster. After several rounds of fighting, the knight found that their enemy could not be judged by common sense. She was not only extremely strong, but also knew swordsmanship and close combat like the back of her hand. She was a skilled and ruthless fighter. No matter how they looked at it, they could not associate her precise killing methods with the 20-year-old girl in front of them. "Get out of my way, all of you!" With a loud shout, Sir Logan rushed into the crowd, pulled up its front hooves and stepped on number 76. The others hurriedly helped to block the gap and tried to trap her. Number 76 grinned. Instead of retreating, she raised her hands and grabbed the two hooves of the horse. The horse neighed, but remained motionless. What she did next made everyone unable to believe their eyes. She lifted Sir and his mount off the ground and swept them towards the surrounding knight. Those who were hit suffered minor fractures and vomited blood, while those who suffered serious injuries died on the spot. Sir was naturally the most miserable one. After being knocked off the horse, his body had been twisted into an abnormal shape. The pursuers who were still alive collapsed. They mounted their horses and scrambled to escape from this place. They were eager to get as far away from this monster as possible, but number 76 obviously would not give them the chance. Once the enemy gave up resisting, what followed was no different from a massacre. By the time number 76 cleaned up all the traces of the battle, it was completely dark outside. The corpses of the knights were thrown into the farmland not far away, and scattered wheat stalks were used as the most basic cover. Although it was only a matter of time before they were discovered, by that time, the witches would have already withdrawn into the territory of Grey Castle. She got into the most luxuriously decorated carriage, lifted the soft cushion on which Yorko usually lay, and carefully took out a magic stone ring which was shining with colorful light from under the cushion. Even under the faint moonlight, one could see that there was a cyclone slowly rotating inside the crystal-like crystal. After carefully examining the ring, number 76 carefully put it into her arms, rearranged the soft cushion, and lay on her back. After that, all she needed to do was to go to the next village unhurriedly and hire a coachman to take her to Grey Castle. They might not stay at the border for too long or even a day, but as long as her destination was the western region of Grey Castle, she would see those witches again one day. Looking at the bright crescent moon outside the window, number 76 could not help but let out a sigh. More than 400 years had passed, and the union that once controlled the vast and fertile land had disappeared like dust. The only thing that had not changed was the starry sky in the night. Only when she looked up at the sky could she feel that she was still alive. Not living in the underground, not living in the present after the Union had disappeared, but living in the holy city of Tequila 400 years ago. That incomparably prosperous witch empire. After that, the road of escape could no longer be considered as living. The only thing that kept her going was a remnant of hope. How does it feel to change back into a female body? Someone asked. Someone asked, do you feel touched by being yourself again? She took 2 deep breaths and tried to move her wrists and ankles. The distance is shorter. Of course. Of course, it's because this body is relatively short and stout, so it's not suitable for you to serve those mortals. The voice chuckled. Besides, there are very few female gods punishment warriors, so you don't have to be so picky. Looks and age are also very important, another person chimed in. If the beauty standards of mortals didn't change drastically, why would anyone want those bodies that look no different from men? Just standing there was enough to spoil his appetite. If you don't believe me, just look at Elena. She would rather have a male body than a defective one. That's right, yours is already the prettiest out of everyone. You know what I mean, Pasha? She raised her head helplessly and looked at the huge sarcoma with wriggling tentacles at the top of the cave. In this way, I have to practice controlling my limbs again. From sewing to wielding a sword, I have to spend time practicing every movement. It doesn't matter. A tentacle dropped down and gently poked her forehead. The only thing we don't lack is time. Why do we have to deal with mortals? Alethea was soaking in the scorching lava and blowing a series of bubbles to show her dissatisfaction. Can't you bring the witches here to test their talents? Have you been sleeping for too long that your brain has become muddled? Pasha retorted. It's not like 400 years ago. Catching 1 or 2 witches is still acceptable, but do you intend to catch hundreds of witches and bring them to the mountains? I don't want to be regarded as a monster by these juniors. Then we can also let the witches carry out this task, right? Don't forget that these bodies that can move around are the witches' enemies. First of all, she has to trust us completely and have the ability to protect herself. Where can we find such a person? Now that the mortals have taken over the outside world, we have to deal with them sooner or later, just like in the Land of Dawn during the first battle of Divine Will. Pasha paused and pointed a tentacle at her. What do you think? Chapter 678. Occasionally, when she did not feel like training, she would enter the deepest part of the underground labyrinth to take a look at the magic core that the Tequila survivors had high hopes for. This is the fully repaired instrument of divine retribution? Are you sure it works? The largest core looked like a simple spindle, and its volume was close to that of a senior witch's experimental tower. Dozens of white scaffolds were like ribs wrapped around internal organs, gathering magic into it. Its extraordinariness was also very obvious. There was clearly nothing hanging or supporting it, but it was able to float in the air of the maze hall. Under the cold light of the core, the underground was no longer just a monotonous fiery red color. Of course, I've been studying it for 385 years. A blob of flesh emerged from the top of the cave and landed beside her with its tentacles. The more I study it, the more I feel that it is the work of the gods. In comparison, the things that the Quest Society had been fiddling with were nothing. Magic stone sigil? I haven't even touched the surface of magic power. If we had discovered this relic 400 years earlier, there might not have been a second battle of divine will. At the mention of magic cores, Celine would become very excited. She had no choice but to pat Celine's rough skin. Have you verified the other cores? Of course. Pasha even used the phantom instrument to perform a miracle in the mortal kingdom thousands of miles away. Ah, you might have been sleeping at that time, so you didn't see this moment. Thousands of miles away? She said in surprise. Yes, it's far beyond the reach of any ability. The infinity sigil is nothing in front of it. Celine waved her tentacles and said, "This is the power of the magic core. It can give witches the ability to go beyond their own limits. The best proof is that the common man who knelt down in fear after witnessing the miracle is the core. It's the direction we should go, not the damn God's punishment army. Long live Lady Natalia. But without the God's punishment army plan, we can't continue, she reminded him. Well, long live Lady Alice too, Celine mumbled reluctantly. But I heard from Pasha that a chosen one is needed to activate the instrument of divine retribution, right? That's right, chosen one. This magic core was too huge and complicated. Without a chosen one, it would forever be a dead object and could not become a new god. Celine hooked her hand with her tentacle. So our hope rests on you. Please find her. If she really exists. At the mention of this question, Sarcoma's voice instantly deepened. Yes, if she really exists. Why can't I become the chosen one? I heard that Starfall City was defeated. They were defeated by mortals. After the news came, the magma underground began to boil. Whether it was the sleepers or the watchers, they all waved their tentacles excitedly. This was the only way they could express their feelings. But not everyone was excited about this. How is that possible? For example, the way Aletheia danced meant shock and anger. How could those guys lose to mortals? Is the source reliable? Someone asked. I'll ask the Chamber of Commerce of Dawn to investigate. Pasha gestured for them to be quiet with her tentacles. Calm down. Don't destroy the cave. It was very strange. They all looked exactly the same, all huge sarcomas with tentacles all over their skin, but she could easily tell them apart. Perhaps after staying here for hundreds of years, even the frequency of their breathing and the way they twisted their tentacles had been engraved in her mind. Pasha lowered her huge body and immersed herself in the magma. To tequila. All the sarcomas that could still move drooped down and said one after another, to tequila. The surging magma calmed down. Once the news is confirmed, I suggest that we immediately take back the god's legacy, Elena said loudly. Starfall City doesn't deserve it anymore. But that will inevitably lead to a direct conflict with the god's punishment army, and I don't think they will be defenseless. Even if Starfall City was defeated by mortals, it doesn't mean that Hermes will suffer a great loss. Aletheia expressed her doubts. Who knows how the mortals won? Maybe they just surrounded and killed 100 God's punishment army soldiers and regarded it as a great victory. It's not impossible. I think so too. Many people voiced their agreement. Another group of mortals will help us figure it out, Pasha said. But the most important thing now is to find the chosen one. Banach Lothar has set up the stage and is waiting for the actors to come on stage. If we can find the chosen one on this trip, the demons will be annihilated and the witches will usher in the most glorious moment. She walked to the exit of the ruins and stopped. It was a large hall. Half of the dome had been crushed by the soil and there was an atrium in the center of the hall, which led to the ground tens of meters high. Bright white light sprinkled down along the atrium and formed a soft beam of light, illuminating the square of land at her feet. There were 2 tombs facing the atrium. There was not a trace of dust on the tombstones, which formed a sharp contrast with the dilapidated ground around it. Obviously, someone had been cleaning this place for hundreds of years and had even planted a circle of white flowers for the people in the tombs. She bent down and knelt on one knee in front of the tombs. This was the burial place of the greatest witches. No matter what kind of differences they had and how fierce the disputes were, they were all for the continuation of the witches. And after they died, they were still close to each other and never separated. 2 of the 3 chiefs of the Union. Alice, the eternal queen of Starfall. Natalia, the dazzling queen of Sunchasa. May the gods be with you. After praying, she stood up and nodded gently to the dome. I'm ready. Send me away. A tentacle stretched out from the shadow, curled around her waist, and rose to the atrium. The palm-sized sky grew bigger and bigger until it suddenly occupied her whole field of vision. She blinked to adapt to the strong light and slowly opened her eyes. The long-lost world on the ground was completely revealed in front of her. I can only send you up to here. Pasha's tentacle hovered at the entrance of the cave. This body can't see the sun. I know. She bent down and hugged the tentacle goodbye. Wait for my good news. By the way, you can't use your original name for the time being. The Chamber of Commerce of Mortals has arranged a new identity for you and a suitable name, number 76. Sounds good. She smiled. Then I'm leaving. Take care. You too. Chapter 679. Although walking in the forest greatly slowed down their speed, it was still safe and sound. 3 days later, a few miles away from the border, Yorko and his entourage unexpectedly met a group of Grey Castle soldiers who were searching along the road. He recognized them at first glance because of their brown fur uniforms and the long metal pipes on their backs. After returning to the city of Evernight with the army and meeting with Duke Kant, Roland finally understood what had happened. After receiving Hill's report, His Majesty had sent 2 secret letters. One of them instructed the detachments of the First Army stationed in Deep Valley Town to divide into 4 teams and enter the Kingdom of Dawn from the 4 intersections of the border between the 2 kingdoms to pick up the retreating diplomats. The other one informed the Duke of the Northern region to prepare for war. In other words, it was to start collecting food, cotton cloth, carriages and other materials needed for war. Once the main force arrived in the northern region, they could immediately set off for war. Fortunately, the emissary delegation was safe and sound. The Duke even heaved a sigh of relief when he said this, which made Yorko feel flattered. But what moved him the most was his old friend's reaction to this matter. Although he knew that the 4 witches in the team made up the majority, the secret letter still mentioned the name of the ambassador, Yorko, and even listed him at the top of the list. This treatment alone made him feel that all the fright and torment he had suffered along the way were worth it. Yorko wrote a long letter about what happened during the evacuation and handed it to the Duke. He hoped that His Majesty would lift the war preparations in the northern region after receiving this letter. Now he finally knew that Hill was right. His Majesty's attitude towards this matter was not just a casual remark. In addition, he was also surprised by the First Army's reaction speed. Minus the time it took for the messenger to deliver the letter, it meant that the army, which was originally used to guard against the remnants of the church and demonic beasts, had already taken action on the day they received the order. It was not that he had never seen nobles mobilizing troops for war, but it took them half a month just to gather the knight, mercenaries and freedmen, not to mention dividing them into groups to carry out tasks. As long as the troops were dispersed and there were fewer people supervising them, the mercenaries who had received the advance payment would probably run away in one night. This was probably the reason why his old friend was able to break into King's City in one day. Yorko now vaguely understood that His Majesty's army was different from the ones he had seen before. Not only in terms of weapons, but also in every aspect, it was far superior to the nobles' vassals. At the same time, as an ambassador, he was not alone. The entire kingdom was not only his shield, but also his sharp blade. At the thought of this, he felt his chest swell up, as if there was a ball of fire burning in it. Now, the only one Yorko was worried about was number 76. According to the agreement, the one who arrived first would hang a 4-color flag in an eye-catching place. Duke Kant sent people to search the city of Evernight, but they did not find such a sign. Now that they were living in the mansion arranged by the Duke, they simply set up a flagpole in front of the door and let the colorful canvas flutter in the wind. As long as one entered the inner city, they would be able to see this symbol at a glance. In fact, he was not the only one who was worried about number 76. Through the window, Yorko could often see Annie and Amy standing under the flagpole. Obviously, they wanted to see number 76 return safely as soon as possible. As they got to know each other better, Annie's attitude towards him changed bit by bit. At least, she didn't stare at him with vigilance like before. Hill's subordinates had come to him more than once, hoping that he could leave for the western region as soon as possible. The magician even told him bluntly that as the seducer, number 76 had little chance of surviving. If the knight had not chased after them, she would have arrived at the border village one day later and arrived at the city of Evernight earlier than them. Now that there was still no movement at the meeting place, the result was basically decided. Yorko also understood this, but he still wanted to wait for a few more days, not for anything else but for her parting words. When the storm is over, I will meet up with you. It will be at the border city of Grey Castle. Remember to wait for me there. In the days after they parted, he finally understood where that strange feeling came from. Although number 76 was a slave in name, he had never treated her as a slave, whether in black money or in the Kingdom of Dawn. Yorko had made up his mind that if she could come back alive, he would set her free. Unfortunately, this realization came a little too late. Another 3 days passed. Just as he was about to leave the northern region the next day, things suddenly took a turn for the better. A carriage stopped by the flagpole. The coachman seemed rather anxious and wanted to say something to the guard at the door, but he hesitated and did not dare to go forward. Yorko saw everything from the window. Before he could go out, Annie and Amy appeared beside the carriage. Number 76 had come back. The news soon spread to every member of the emissary delegation. Even Duke Kant curiously came to see the brave maid who had sacrificed herself. But she was not in good condition. When Yorko saw number 76, she was covered with wounds. Her right hand and left foot were broken and she could hardly move. "Sir." Number 76 blinked her eyes and forced a smile. "Sorry to keep you waiting." In an instant he felt his whole body relax. "It's good that you're back." They stayed in the city of Evernight for another week until number 76's injuries stabilized. Then they set off for Deep Valley Town and left the northern region by ship. During this time, Yorko also asked about what happened after they parted. She was caught by the night of the city of Glow before sunset. In order to buy as much time as possible, she untied the reins of all the horses and drove them to run in the opposite direction to block the knight who was speeding up. At the same time, she changed to a lone horse and fled to the mountains beside the road. But before he could run far, he was blocked by a mountain stream. Knowing that she would die if she was caught, she directly jumped off the cliff, which was more than 30 meters deep. Fortunately, there were branches and vines on both sides of the cliff, so she did not fall to pieces. But during the process of rolling down, her head was bleeding and her limbs were broken by the protruding rocks. When she fell to the side of the stream, she had already passed out. Perhaps the knight had not found a suitable way down the mountain, or he thought that she was dead, so he did not continue to chase her. It was already late at night when she woke up. She stayed awake by relying on the cold water of the stream and occasionally caught 1 or 2 small fish and shrimps. 2 days later, number 76 was found by the villagers who were fishing nearby and saved her life. Although the hero could transfer the pain, it could not heal the wounds. The only way was to send her to the western region to see if the witches there could help her recover. No matter what, she finally came back alive. Chapter 680. At the tail of the autumnal twilight, Neverwinter welcomed a long-awaited guest. It was Marjorie, the businesswoman. For this friend who was the first to come to his door and brought rich rewards to the struggling border town, Roland gave her the highest standard of courtesy. Not only did the First Army welcome her with cannons, he also personally went to Shallow Beach and took her into the castle. "You're too kind, Your Majesty," Marjorie said with a smile. "I'm just an ordinary businesswoman." "Without your help, the western region wouldn't have developed to what it is today," Roland replied casually. "Neverwinter will never betray our friendship." Whether it was the initial purchase of a large amount of food or the subsequent renting of many ships to transport refugees, they were all completed with the help of Marjorie's Chamber of Commerce. Even Theo being able to gain a foothold in the Old King's City was inseparable from Margaret's connections and support. Although these were not provided for free, Roland was very clear that many things could not be achieved with money alone. "It's my honor to be called a friend by you," Marjorie said with a slight bow. "This time, in addition to fulfilling the perfume contract, I also brought you a new business opportunity." She pointed behind her. "They are the most prominent businessmen in the fjords and are very interested in your steam sailing plan." "Really?" Roland smiled. "Please introduce them to me later." According to his usual practice, when dealing with businessmen he talked while eating. After entering the reception hall, the long table was filled with all kinds of delicious food, and these overseas guests seemed to be very satisfied that they did not have to eat fish. In addition, noble etiquette was not popular in the fjords, so they tried to control themselves at first and behaved as elegantly as possible. After a few glasses of wine, the atmosphere became more and more lively, and the imitation etiquette was all forgotten. Roland did not mind at all. Compared with the cumbersome dining rules in the palace, he preferred a lively dining environment. As they chatted, he gained a general understanding of the visiting merchant group. In addition to Gammon and Marlene, the two businessmen from Crescent Moon Bay who first visited Border Town, there were also chambers of commerce from Sunset Island and Shallow Water City. The two islands, one in the south and the other in the north, were next to Crescent Moon Bay, forming a closely connected trade circle. As the original settlement of the fjords, the three islands were not large, but their population and strength were among the top in the fjords. The competition between them was also quite fierce, which could be seen from the size of the other two fleets. Each of the ships docked at the port of Shallow Water City was a large three-masted ship, each of which could carry nearly 300 people and the same weight of cargo. The price of such a ship was already close to 5,000 golden dragon, not including the sailors. Obviously, these two chambers of commerce did not want to fall behind Crescent Moon Bay in the fight for face and strength. When the dessert was served, it meant that the talks would officially begin. I heard from Marjorie that you all want to buy a steam engine? Yes, Your Majesty. Nibelung, the person in charge of the Shallow Water City Chamber of Commerce, was the first to speak. But not only the steam engine, we also want the steam ship you sold to Crescent Moon Bay. I heard that the renovation fee you offered was 1,800 golden dragon stones. The Sunset Island is willing to add 200 more to rebuild 5 ships at the price of 2,000 golden dragon. A merchant from the Sunset Island was not willing to be left behind. The Chamber of Commerce can pay half of the deposit first. Obviously, they were referring to the steam paddle steamers that Crescent Moon Bay had purchased a year ago. For Roland, this was a technology that was about to be eliminated. He could use this batch of orders to train workers and earn a lot of money at the same time. It was a very cost-effective deal. It takes 2 to 3 months to modify one paddle steamer and about a year to modify 5 paddle steamers. If you can accept it, Barav, the director of City Hall, will sign the contract with you. No problem at all, but Sunset Island has a small request. Atiya cleared his throat. We hope that you can use the craftsmen of the fjords to complete the ship modification. What do you mean? Roland raised his eyebrows. Just like the steam engine factory in Crescent Moon Bay, we will provide you with a group of craftsmen. The ships they modify will be used by Sunset Island first. When the 10-year period is over, they will be free to choose whether to stay or leave. The Shallow Water City also hopes to sign the contract in this way, Nibelung echoed. The 5 sailboats are only the first batch of orders. If you can agree to our request, at least 5 ships will be modified every year. So that's how it is, Roland thought. So this is a big deal that will last for 10 years, and the annual transaction price is as high as 10,000 gold royals, and after 10 years, they will get the detailed modification method, so that they won't always be under the control of others. But the fact was that he did not care about spreading this method at all. Compared with the steam turbine under development and the 3-rise steam engine that had been put into production, the paddle steamer was obviously behind the times. The original purpose of signing the 10-year contract with Crescent Moon Bay was to let the craftsmen adapt to life in the western region, so that they would not be willing to return to the fjords and eventually become a member of Neverwinter, not to prevent the leakage of technology. Technology without the industrial foundation was nothing more than a beautiful castle in the air. Thinking of this, Roland knocked on the table. There's no problem in principle, but we may be able to make some changes in the details, such as changing the 10-year period to 5 years. Speaking of this, the two merchants' faces showed obvious joy. For them, it was naturally a better choice to master the technology of steam ship modification earlier. As long as the Shallow Water City and the Sunset Island are willing to keep the craftsmen in the western region, I can give you a 20% discount on the price. What do you think? The two suddenly hesitated. After all, it was not so easy to train craftsmen. They could shorten the 10-year period by hundreds of people and save 2,000 golden dragons every year. They were not sure whether this deal was worthwhile at the moment. Your Majesty, Can I discuss it with the other people of the Chamber of Commerce before giving you an answer? Nibelung said. Of course. Roland made a gesture to let him go. Please allow me to leave for the time being. Atir followed and left the reception hall. So, he looked at Gammon and Marlene. The purpose of your trip doesn't seem to be the steamship? Just as the two chambers of commerce were competing to talk about business, the expression of the representative of Crescent Moon Bay had been very calm. Occasionally, when he spoke, he talked about the past transactions with Border Town. It felt like they were not here to talk about business, but to chat about daily life. This kind of emotional behavior naturally aroused Roland's curiosity. No, Your Majesty, we also came for the steamship. Gammon took a sip of white wine. But not the wooden paddle steamer. Crescent Moon Bay wants an indestructible steel ship that can split the wind and waves, the one you built for Lord Thunder. Chapter 681. Your Majesty, I've never told anyone about you and Lord Thunder. She hurriedly defended herself. I know. Roland waved his hand and looked at Gammon with great interest. Where did you hear the news? Although he did not treat it as a secret, the steel ship had just been built, and there were still several months before it could be put into the water and outfitting. Moreover, it was built in a fully enclosed dock at the shoal, and the selected workers were all the most skilled local residents. It was almost impossible for outsiders to know this news. If any of the locals were secretly contacting the fjords, it was worth paying attention. Lord Thunder is recruiting a new expedition team, and the scale is larger than any previous one. This is already a big event in the fjords. There are many outstanding captains in Crescent Moon Bay, so it's not unusual for them to join his team. Gammon smiled and said, the news about this mysterious iron ship also came from Thunder. After all, in order to dispel other people's apprehensions about entering the waters to the west of the Shadow Islands, he has to show some hard methods. How many people know about this? Not much, Your Majesty. Sir Thunder's prestige is much higher than us merchants. If it wasn't for the fact that the captain had received a great favor from the Crescent Moon Chamber of Commerce, he wouldn't have revealed even half a word to us. I see. Roland nodded. But this kind of ship is extremely difficult to build, and it's impossible to build a second one in a short time, so I can't meet your requirements. We understand, Your Majesty, Marlin said. We only hope that after you complete the deal with Lord Thunder, you can sell us the second steel ship. For this, the Crescent Moon Bay Chamber of Commerce is willing to pay a 10% deposit first, and the remaining 40% immediately after the construction starts. Without even asking about the price, they began to talk about the deposit. Roland once again experienced the adventurous spirit of the fjords people, or in other words, they were far more sensitive to ships than the rulers of the Four Kingdoms. At least he had never seen any nobleman who would pay a high price for something he had never seen before. Neverwinter also needs steel ships and more than one. It may take 2 or 3 years for the dockyard to be free. Have you ever considered sending craftsmen to participate in the construction and sign a new 10-year or 5-year contract? That way, we might be able to speed up the construction process by quite a bit, and you guys will also be able to obtain the corresponding technology afterwards. You must be joking, Gammon said a little awkwardly. We absolutely have no intention of coveting it. If the steel ship is really as Sir Thunder said, you can totally rely on it to become the most popular partner of the Fjords Islands. How would we dare to ask you for such a technology? I'm not joking. Roland took a sip of his drink and shrugged. This time, it was the two of them who were stunned. After a while, Gammon asked in disbelief, You mean, you're willing to disclose the technology to the Crescent Moon Bay Chamber of Commerce? As long as you can provide enough craftsmen, not only blacksmiths and carpenters, but also apprentices, Roland replied without hesitation. 2,000 people, if that's not enough, you can use literate civilians to make up for it in 5 years. What do you think? In this way, your ship can start construction next year. Of course, the shipbuilding costs will still be paid by you. I really can't guess what you're thinking, Your Majesty, Gammon said with a wry smile. Isn't this your trump card? Roland shook his head. The steel ship I'm building for Thunder is already the latest cutting-edge technology that Neverwinter can provide at present. He was not deliberately bluffing. At present was absolutely not an exaggeration. As for 5 or 6 years later, who knew? Then why did you? Gammon was stunned and then waved his hand helplessly. No, I'd better not ask. Crescent Moon Bay is willing to make this deal. But because technology could not be realized without the foundation. Not to mention shipbuilding technology, even if they packed up the mines, machine tools, and converters and threw them all to fjords, they did not have enough manpower to maintain this huge industrial system. When the first steam engine was invented, the manufacturing industry was no longer an industry that could be imitated by a pair of skilled hands and a hammer. Roland could not help but think of the captain of the Black Sea's reply to the construction of Variag. To complete it, we need the Central Committee of the Party, the State Planning Commission, the Military Industry Commission, and 9 ministries of defense industry. Although the current steel ship was far from meeting such high requirements, it was also the result of the joint production of the whole Neverwinter. Except for the core power part and the hull welding which Anna was responsible for, the rest of the parts had been sent to the assembly plant in batches and were processed by ordinary people. It could be said that this was the inevitable trend of industrial development. Therefore, rather than hiding the technology, he needed more manpower to turn his idea into results. The population of Neverwinter had been rising rapidly, but he still felt that it was not fast enough. However, he did not need to explain this to a businessman. After 5 years, the businessman would naturally understand. Wise choice, the steel ship won't let you down. Roland raised his glass. Cheers. What? It means to drink up the wine in one gulp to show celebration, he explained calmly. It's the King's City's new etiquette. Really? Then, cheers. The 2 businessmen from Crescent Moon Bay bit the bullet and poured the whole glass of white wine into their mouths. Not long after, Nibelung and Atir also returned to the reception hall and expressed their agreement to sign the contract. As a result, Neverwinter received an unprecedented huge order, 4,000 gold coins as a deposit for the transformation of the Golden Dragon. The remaining 4,000 gold coins would be paid after the transformation, and 5,000 gold coins as an advance payment for the construction of the Golden Dragon. These were all payments that could be received within the year, not to mention the total price that would depend on the subsequent construction progress. He could already imagine Barev's smile from ear to ear. With a rich income, City Hall had more confidence to arrange a job for every subject. Seeing that they had reached an agreement, Nibelung changed the topic. Your Majesty, in addition to ships, we also heard that you will sell a lot of perfume here. I wonder. Ms. Marjorie has signed a perfume agency contract with me 6 months ago. After the opening of the Shoal port, she will be responsible for the sale of perfume to the Fjord Islands. So if you want to buy perfume, you should talk to her, not me. Seeing the regretful look on Nibelung's face, Roland continued, but Neverwinter is also preparing to promote a new product. Maybe you'll be interested. Speaking of this, he clapped his hands, and the guard on duty outside the hall quickly came in with 3 glass bottles. Chapter 682. What's this? Marjorie asked curiously. Is it a newly brewed fruit wine? If it's just fruit wine, it won't sell as well as perfume. Nibelung shook his head. That's not necessarily true. Gammon looked at the glass bottle with great interest. Let's not talk about what's in the bottle. This unique container alone is worth several Golden Dragon coins. Is it a new product of the alchemist workshop of King's City? Marlene echoed. I've never seen such a big crystal glass bottle before. The appearance is not important. The key lies in the product itself. Roland did not know whether to laugh or cry. He did not expect these merchants to be interested in the glass bottle first. As long as the formula was mastered, the colorless glass was a low-cost and mass-produced product. However, he did not sell glass containers alone because the current glass output in Neverwinter was used by chemical laboratories, perfume factories, and beverage factories. It's called Chaos Drink. Just like its name, it's chaotic and unpredictable. Every sip is a unique enjoyment. He cleared his throat and pretended to be mysterious. I bet you've never tasted a similar taste. If you don't believe me, try it and you'll know. The 3 bottles of drinks were carefully selected by Roland from Evelyn's beverage library. Not only did they taste unique, but 2 of them were also specially processed. One was chilled, and the other was filled with dry ice, which could be said to be the world's first carbonated drink. And the result was just as he expected. As soon as they took a sip, the 5 merchants' faces showed a wonderful expression. How on earth was this made? Atair smacked his lips. Compared with those fruit wines, they're completely tasteless. Look at this glass of green apple juice, it's still steaming. My God, is it breathing? Apple? Even honey can't be so sweet. The merchants expressed their opinions one after another, and at the same time, they did not stop raising their glasses. The drinks were downed one after another, until all 3 bottles were empty. Burp. Gammon licked his lips and said, "Your Majesty, your chaos drinks are amazing. If it's sold as a commodity, do you think there will be a market?" "Of course," the merchant from Crescent Moon Bay said without hesitation. Taking into account the different tastes, the popularity of the 3 beverages may be slightly different, but they are definitely rare wines. I bet that after tasting it, no one will be interested in the high-quality fruit wine from the Kingdom of Dawn anymore. You're quite frank. Roland couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth. Normally, if a merchant wanted to buy a product, they would pick out some flaws to lower the price. It was rare to see such a straightforward praise. I dare not lie to His Majesty, nor do I want to lie to my own tongue. Gammer paused for a moment. But there's one thing I don't quite understand. Tell me about it. Why did you give it such a weird name? He picked up the iced bottle, which still had a thin layer of hoarfrost on it. For example, this can be called a deep-sea ice spring. If it was in summer, I can guarantee that it would appear in every banquet. As for that bottle of numbing green drink, I think it can be called fish egg dew. To be honest, the sour and numbing feeling of countless little fish breaking out of their eggs and hitting the tongue is really memorable, Marlene added. I think so too. Marjorie laughed. Although the word chaos sounds very novel, it can't highlight their distinct characteristics. If they were named separately, they would definitely sell better. Roland pretended to be regretful and said, "Unfortunately, as I said before, every sip of these drinks is a unique enjoyment. In fact, these 3 bottles are the last in stock." "You mean, they can't be brewed anymore?" "Yes, I can't reveal the process of making chaos drinks to you, but the final result is always changing. If there's one thing they have in common, it's that they're all delicious. That's why I named it chaos. No matter what taste it is, it's always 1 sip less." Everyone gasped, and everyone saw the incredulity in each other's eyes. The rarer something is, the more precious it is. This drink, which was of excellent quality and could not be replicated, could definitely bring a storm to the fjords, and even the 4 kingdoms. "Your Majesty, please leave it to me." Gammon was the first to speak. "The fleets of Crescent Moon Bay are all over the coasts of the 4 kingdoms. Only we can bring you the most generous returns. Isn't the Sea Trade Center of Crescent Moon Bay always the Kingdom of Dawn? When did the Kingdom of Everwinter open a trade route?" The Chamber of Commerce of Shallow Water City criticized. "Sunset Island has the most merchant ships heading for the Kingdom of Wolfheart and the Kingdom of Everwinter. You're deceiving His Majesty." Atair followed closely behind. Roland stretched out his hand and interrupted the dispute between the 3. "About this matter, let's establish a joint Chamber of Commerce." Joint Chamber of Commerce. That's right. In order to avoid malicious competition, participants will sit down and jointly negotiate the areas they are responsible for, and Neverwinter will only be responsible for providing the goods. He tried his best to describe the concept of regional agents. You all have trade routes that have been in operation for a long time, and you also have sales towns that you are familiar with. In this way, you can divide the market according to your advantages. You can sell your goods quickly, and you won't have to compete with your peers. The final sales revenue will be divided according to the proportions stipulated in the contract, so that all participants can be guaranteed. This principle was very simple, and the merchants present quickly understood. It sounds good, but how will the specific areas and the proportion be divided? The cost of bringing the drink to the kingdom of Everwinter and selling it in the fjords is huge. Of course, transportation costs are also a factor to consider, in addition to labor costs, sales price, product output, and so on. In general, in the case of limited supply, the agent with the highest cost will get a certain degree of preferential treatment. Of course, the details need to be discussed gradually until all participants are satisfied. At first glance, this would seem to reduce the total income, but in fact, after eliminating malicious competition, and with the three chambers of commerce playing their strengths, the profits would be much higher. Due to the lack of sales channels, many goods in Neverwinter were still for internal consumption in the convenience market. For Roland, these fjords merchants who made a fortune by reselling goods were the best suppliers. In the future, he would provide the goods, and these sea merchants would sell them to all corners of the continent, which was undoubtedly the most labor-saving method. I'm willing to join. Marjorie was the first to express her support. Seeing that someone had expressed her support, the others also showed an attitude of temporarily giving it a try. Chapter 683. Fjords, Sleeping Island. As winter approached, the sea breeze blowing across the island became colder. Even with the windows closed, Tilly could still hear the sharp whistling sound of the cold wind passing through the gaps. Normally, not many people would be willing to hang out outside at this time, but in fact, people were always celebrating in the central square of Sleeping Island. The grand bonfire party had lasted for several days. Pot after pot of hot fish soup was boiled. The witches displayed their abilities and turned the square into a pleasant paradise. If there were not so many things to deal with, Tilly would also like to join the party and share the joy of the church's defeat with everyone. Since she had brought the news back, the witches' lives had changed completely, not in terms of living conditions, but in terms of their spirits. Everyone seemed to have been relieved of a heavy burden. Their eyes were brighter than before, and their words and actions were obviously relaxed and free. From that moment on, they finally did not have to live in worry and fear. The mountain that had been pressing on their heads suddenly collapsed, the dense haze disappeared, and even the whistling cold wind could not dispel their enthusiasm. This was probably the feeling of liberation that Roland had mentioned, Tilly thought. At this moment, Camilla Derry, the chief butler of Sleeping Island, knocked on the door and walked into the room. "Your Highness, I've done a preliminary count of the witches who are willing to go to the Western region." She sat cross-legged opposite Tilly and put a stack of names on the low table. "Almost half of them have signed up to support the Western region." "Really? It's much better than I expected. Thank you." Tilly nodded with a smile and picked up the list to read carefully. As for moving to the Western region, Princess Tilly told the witches on the island that they would support the construction of Neverwinter to resist a greater disaster, the arrival of the Battle of Divine Will. In order to make the witches loyal to their own wishes, Tilly did not hide the news about the Witch Empire, the Union, and the demons. Instead, she clearly told them that the church was only a part of the Union, and that the real enemies of the people were demons from another world. They did not have mercy, nor did they have the slightest mercy. So helping the Western region was also helping themselves. Of course, even if he lived on the island, it wouldn't be a problem for him to live the rest of his life in peace. She had thought that many of her sisters would be frightened by the new enemy, or that they would be tired of dealing with ordinary people and would have doubts about the uncertain future, so they would decide to stay on Sleeping Island. However, based on the statistics of nearly half of the witches, the demons that they had never met were far less terrible than the church, and the witches' yearning for the outside world had not been extinguished. They are very interested in Prince Roland, who defeated the Pope. They all want to see what kind of person the Lord, who eradicated the greatest enemy of the witches, looks like. Camilla sighed helplessly. And there is also a very important point. The identity of your brother also gives him a lot of points. They have also transferred their trust in you to him. You don't look very reassured. Of course, he is, after all, a noble and an ordinary person. He is fundamentally different from us, and with all due respect, when it comes to interests, blood can sometimes be a hindrance. Chief Butler frowned slightly. Your Highness, I'm not questioning your decision, nor am I saying that your brother is two-faced, but in case. I mean in case what he seeks is contrary to the interests of the witches, and he raises a butcher's knife against us again like the other nobles, what should we do? I understand your concern. I made this decision after careful consideration. Tilly put down the list and held Camilla's hand. Witches may be different from ordinary people, but under the threat of the battle of divine will, we have the same goal, and that is to survive. Instead of completely avoiding the secular world, why not take this opportunity to integrate into it and form an inseparable community of interests with ordinary people? When our abilities go deep into various fields, even if Roland wants to break the agreement with Sleeping Island, he can't leave the witch's power. But, will he loosen his control over us? In the past 6 months, Roland hasn't imposed any additional restrictions on witches. Otherwise, the Witch Union of the Western region wouldn't have supported him unreservedly. Tilly smiled. And compared to these principles, I believe in my intuition more. Intuition? Well, I don't think he will do such a thing, she said slowly, knocking on the table. Camilla was stunned for a moment, and finally laughed as if surrendering. Come to think of it, ever since I met you, your judgment has never been wrong. It will be the same this time. Tilly raised the corner of her mouth. I understand, Your Highness. Chief Butler put his hand on his chest and said, I'll finish the preparations for the witches' migration as soon as possible. Thank you. Princess Tilly knew that Camilla, who was originally a noble, had long lost confidence in this social class because she had seen too much of the power struggles and dirty deeds among the nobles. However, she did not know that Roland was not like a traditional noble at all. The more she got to know him, the more obvious it became to Tilly. Not only did he treat witches this way, but he also treated everyone else in a completely different way compared to the nobles. She called him brother, not because of his past relationship with Prince Roland, but because she simply liked to get along without any barriers or prejudice. When talking with Roland, she always felt relaxed and comfortable, which she had not felt for a long time. She believed that other witches also felt the same way. By the way, I've heard some bad rumors recently. Camilla changed the subject. What rumors? It's related to the news you brought back. Some people think that since witches used to create a huge empire and brought all ordinary people under their rule, they should imitate the Union and create an organization with witches as the leaders to restore the glory of their ancestors. What about the source? Tilly raised her eyebrows. Is it the witches of the Bloodfang Association? No. They believe in being loyal to the strong. The Western region was able to defeat the seemingly invincible enemy, and with the help of Iffy, Soft Feathers, and Nightfall, those combat witches were the first batch of people to sign up to support Neverwinter. Camilla shook her head. I've investigated it. The source should be from other witch organizations. The Witches of Sleeping Island were a large group. In addition to the Bloodfang Association, there were also some scattered groups, such as the Witch Cooperation Association in Seawinshire. Before she launched the call, these groups were generally formed to escape the arrest of the church and to help each other. However, they did not have the strength of the Bloodfang Association and rarely criticized Tilly's policies. I see. She nodded. Do you need me to talk to their leader? Chapter 684. After Camilla Derry left, Ashes walked out of the study. She knelt on the carpet and stretched out her hands to Tilly. Come on. Actually, I'm fine. Don't force yourself. There's no one else here, Ashes interrupted. Tilly curled her lips, but in the end she moved her body and leaned into Roland's embrace. Through her clothes she could hear Ashes' strong and powerful heartbeat. It was like the rhythmic beat of a drum, which made her feel steady and steady. Thank you, Tilly said in a low voice. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Even if we make a wrong judgment, we can just go back to Sleeping Island. Ashes chuckled. Roland Wimbledon won't dare to stop you. Otherwise, the sisters in the Witch Union won't just sit by and watch. She paused. And you don't have to be so sure. Otherwise, the the pressure won't be as great as it is now. Princess Tilly shook her head. If I want to convince others, I have to convince myself first. If I show a trace of hesitation and confusion, I won't be able to carry out this decision. Although she appeared to be confident, it was impossible to say that she did not feel a little uneasy. It was not that she was worried about Roland. In fact, when he agreed to let Sleeping Spell continue to manage the witches' migration, it showed his attitude. What she worried about was whether the more than 300 witches who had been away from the secular world for nearly 2 years could smoothly integrate into Neverwinter, and whether the ordinary people's views on witches would change after the end of the Battle of Divine Will. These were all unknown risks, and Tilly had no choice but to consider them. In the eyes of others, she was always full of confidence and spirit, but in fact, only a few people understood her real feelings. After all, now she not only needed to take care of herself, but also the fate of more than 300 witches on the island. It could be said that after the church was defeated, all the witches on Sleeping Island felt unprecedentedly relaxed. Only she felt that the responsibility on her shoulders had become heavier. Then do as you think. Ashes hugged her from behind. Anyway, the migration won't start until the end of the months of demons next year. If you're still worried, use the next few months to take a good look. Is the charming beauty ready to sail? Anytime. Don't forget to bring your textbooks and exercise books. You can learn new things on the way. If I read in the cabin, I will get seasick. If you want to protect me, of course you have to become stronger, such as the legendary Transcendent. How can you become stronger if you don't study? Ashes let out a painful groan. All right, I got it. Don't worry. If there's anything you don't understand, you can always ask me. There's nothing else to do on the ship, right? Yes, as you wish, Your Highness. Fortunately, he was no longer alone. No matter what the road ahead would be, there would always be someone by his side. Okay, Tilly answered. She closed her eyes and felt the warmth on her back. Her shoulders seemed to have lightened a lot. The cold wind was still howling outside the window, but the room was as warm as spring. The establishment of the Joint Chamber of Commerce was a complicated process. Every contract needed to be finalized by many parties. After Roland entrusted this matter to Barav and Edith, he turned his attention to the winter battle plan. There was no doubt that this year's months of demons would come much later than the previous year. Today was the last day of the end of autumn, but there was still no sign of snow except for the gray sky outside the window. This was good news for Neverwinter. The later the months of demons came, the faster the construction team could build 2 more houses. According to the report from City Hall, the Western region's supplies had increased significantly compared to previous years, especially in terms of food. The annual output of the Longsong area had reached more than 10 times that of the past. If Perot had not built a batch of grain depots and transported half of the wheat to the border area, the stronghold would not have been able to hold so much food. With enough food, no matter what they did, they would be confident. Secondly, there was the ammunition storage. Anna improved the new generation of machine tools and processing machinery for the processing and loading of bullets, which greatly improved the production efficiency and made up for the loss after the battle with the church. With food and weapons in hand, Roland's mind began to wander. Defending Neverwinter against the invasion of demonic beasts was undoubtedly the First Army's top priority, but it seemed a waste to gather thousands of soldiers in the city. After all, the main direction of the demonic beasts' attack was the Big Hermes Gap, and the Misty Forest was just a fish that had escaped the net. Moreover, the firepower of the army was more than 10 times that of a year ago. Ordinary demonic beasts might not even be able to reach the edge of the city wall. Another thing that made him eager was that not only the demonic beasts were no match for the First Army, but the whole continent was not any better. If it was said that during the battle with Duke Ryan, he still needed all of his men to charge forward with guns and cannons. But now, he only needed to pull out a team of 500 men and they would be able to sweep away any knights who dared to charge forward. Then, while defending the city wall, would it be feasible to send a team to open up a second battlefield to reduce the burden of next year's expedition? Roland found that this was not too difficult a problem. Originally, when the months of demons came, the endless snow would completely block the western region. But now, for Neverwinter, which had dozens of cement transport ships, the land route was no longer an obstacle. The First Army could still use the Redwater River to transport soldiers and supplies to their destination. As long as the plan was right, Neverwinter was completely capable of winning 2 wars at the same time. Well, it sounded like a hegemonic country. After receiving Hill's letter, Roland did not pretend to order the northern region to enter a state of war preparation. If Apen Moya, the King of Dawn, really ignored the warning and captured the ambassador and his team, then he could only change the plan and force the Kingdom of Dawn to release them first. However, the cross-border battle required a lot of logistics. If he sent too few soldiers, it would be difficult to maintain the supply line. Besides, the Hermes Plateau guarded by the church could collapse at any time, so it was not the right time to attack the neighboring country. Fortunately, the emissaries were safe and sound in the end, so he could also set his target closer to the western region. "Your Majesty, what can I do for you?" As the office door was pushed open, Iron Axe strode in. "Are you interested in going back to your homeland in winter? It shouldn't be too hot if you go back now." Roland spread out a simple map of Grey Castle, pointed to a small protruding corner in the south, and asked with a smile, "I remember that you and Echo are both from this desert, right?" Chapter 685. "Your Majesty, are you going to send troops to the southernmost region now?" Iron Axe, who had always been calm, showed a rare excitement. "But the months of demons are coming soon. How many people do you think should be left in Neverwinter to deal with the swarming demonic beasts?" "Well." Iron Axe took a deep breath and forcibly suppressed his excitement. "According to the scale of the previous year, 1,000 people should be enough to defend the city wall. So, to be on the safe side, 2,500 soldiers should be more than enough. Moreover, a new batch of reserve troops has been recruited, so it won't be a problem to defend Neverwinter." Roland stood up and walked to the French window. "Let me tell you about the southernmost region. You should be the most familiar with the people there." "Yes, Your Majesty." Iron Axe saluted. Most of the land in the southernmost region is yellow sand. Oases are scattered along the Silver Stream to the west of the desert. More than 90% of the Majans live in these oases. There is a city built on the largest oasis, which is also the only city in the southernmost region, Iron Sand City. "Is the Silver Stream a river?" "It can only be regarded as half a river," Iron Axe explained. "Most of the time, it's buried in the ground, like the underground Styx River. The exposed part has become an oasis, so the Majans also call it the River of Life." Roland turned around and asked curiously, "Where does it originate from?" "According to the map, there are no mountains or lakes nearby. It originates from the sea. It's a gift from the sea god." Iron Axe walked to the table and pointed to the western part of the southernmost region where the green land was connected. "There's a huge karst cave here. The seawater constantly flows into the cave. When you stand on it, you can feel the tremors under your feet." "You mean the seawater is the source of the Silver Stream? But it can obviously breed oases." The fact that it could breed oases meant that the Silver Stream was a freshwater river. The seawater was too salty to be used for irrigation and drinking, which sounded completely unreasonable. Mother Earth absorbed the salt in the seawater. That area is covered with white salt powder, which also isolated the green land of Grey Castle. When you need salt, you just need to take a bucket and scoop it from the ground. Is this the work of Mother Nature? The soil under the yellow sand actually filtered out the salt and formed a saline alkali land? Roland clicked his tongue in wonder. It seemed that apart from oil, there was another resource that he needed to collect. How many people live in the Iron Sand City? About 40,000. Even more than the old king's city of Grey Castle? Your Majesty, the city of the Sand Nation is different from the capital of the kingdom, Iron Axe said with a smile. Iron Sand City only has one core area for the rulers of the 6 clans to live in. The periphery is basically filled with tents or thatched bungalows. The city has gradually become what it is today. As long as you enter the oasis, you'll be considered to have entered the territory of Iron Sand City. What about the Majins who live in other oases? There should be quite a number of them, right? Roland asked. Population was the key to quickly converting local specialties into usable resources. It was unlikely that he would dispatch a large number of people from Neverwinter to extract oil. In the end, he still had to use the locals to work for him. The commander-in-chief nodded. No one has counted, but I estimate that there are at least 100,000 of them. Then it should be enough to build several mining stations and a transportation line. The next problem was how to control them. By the way, what about the holy duel you mentioned last time? How do the Majins determine their ruling rights? This time, Iron Axe's answer was very detailed. After about half an hour, Roland finally figured out the way the Sand Nation competed for power. Putting aside the promotion within the clan for now, for these aliens who revered strength, great strength was the only thing that was worth trusting. The ruling class of Iron Sand City was usually composed of 6 clans. They were not under the Wanshur family, but fought for power with their own strength. However, in order to avoid the clans fighting for power and profit, which would weaken the ability of the clans to deal with external dangers, it became the best choice to select a small number of people as representatives for the duel. Over time, this rule was recognized by all the Sand Nation and was given a sacred meaning. Whether it was the big clans that lived in Iron Sand City or the small clans born in the Oasis, they all had to abide by the result of the holy duel. Anyone who tarnished the duel would be despised by all the Sand Nation. Is the supreme ruler of the Majins the chiefs of the clans? Roland was puzzled. Don't you have a chief or something like that? A chief? A leader who can unify all the clans, like the king of Grey Castle. Well, Iron Axe hesitated. There's a saying among the clans that if you want all the Sand Nation to surrender, there are only 2 ways. One is to get the affirmation and blessing of the 3 gods, and the other is to open up a vast oasis for the clan, eliminate the overwhelming sandstorm, and keep the Sand Nation away from hunger, thirst, and death. The approval of the 3 gods. How do you calculate that? Roland frowned. In the Land of Fire, you just need to offer the corresponding offerings to the 3 gods, namely, the giant armored scorpion that rules the earth, the unicorn that rules the southernmost corner, and the 4-winged eagle that rules the sky. Iron Axe paused. These 3 beasts come and go like ghosts and have taken away countless lives, but no one has ever found their lair. Baits and traps don't work. I even guess that they may be hybrid demonic beasts that have the most basic intelligence. Both conditions were not easy to achieve, especially the second one, which was to make an oasis grow in the desert, which was almost close to the power of God. Roland could not help but be lost in thought. If he could only let Echo regain the position of chief and take revenge for the framing 5 years ago, it would not be of much help to unify the entire southernmost region. Although the 6 clans were different in status, there was no direct relationship between them, let alone the Sand Nation scattered in the oasis. He had to think of a way to make himself the chief of the Majin clan. In addition, he had to consider the holy duel. The first army might be able to easily defeat the guards of Iron Sand City, but it would not be so easy to make the Sand Nation voluntarily obey the rule. The most suitable way was to use the rules set by the Majin clan to realize the annexation plan. Can we invite people from other clans to fight in the duel? That's not a problem, Iron Axe affirmed. I'm a mixed blood, but I can still participate in the duel on behalf of the Osha clan. In fact, brave gladiators are often welcomed by the big clans, and they are the only hope for the small clans to turn over. If there are 3 or 4 brave gladiators in the later generations, there is hope for a better ranking in the holy duel. Chapter 686. 3 days later, which was the 2nd day of winter, Barav brought the news that the Joint Chamber of Commerce had signed a contract successfully. The final result of the negotiation was that Marjorie would be responsible for the mainland sales of Grey Castle, Sunset Island and Shallow Water Town would be responsible for the island, the Kingdom of Everwinter and the Kingdom of Wolfheart respectively, and Crescent Moon Bay would take over the other islands in the fjords and the Kingdom of Dawn. To Roland's surprise, he also saw an arithmetic equation in the contract, which basically set several major conditions as unknowns. Fill in the equation according to the specific situation, and then get a share of the current year's income. Who wrote this? Roland asked curiously. My disciple, Barav said with a smile while stroking his beard. During the summary, he found that instead of making a complicated schedule, it was more appropriate to use this formula to express it, and all three parties agreed on its accuracy. I don't remember this being taught in the universal education. Didn't you open an intermediate class? I bought a set of mathematics textbooks for each disciple and asked them to attend Lady Scroll's lectures whenever they had time. He sighed. I'm getting old and I can't keep up with these young people, so I have to let them take advantage of me. If I were 10 years younger, I would definitely carry these books with me and read them every day, Your Majesty. This flattery made Roland feel good all over. Furthermore, he realized that mathematical knowledge was helpful for financial and administrative management. The head steward's insight was quite good. What about Edith? How did she do in this negotiation? Not too bad. Barav coughed twice. Although she charmed those merchants, she obviously lacked experience when it came to specific commercial terms. I guess she rarely dealt with sea merchants. After all, the trade in the northern region is not developed, unlike the old King's City, where the finance minister almost every day had to summon visiting fjords merchants. Back then. I see. Seeing that the chief was about to go back into his memory mode, Roland hurriedly interrupted. In that case, you should teach her more. The old chief's face stiffened. Your Majesty, she actually. That's settled, Roland said gloatingly. Judging from the frequency of Nightingale pinching his shoulder from behind, he knew that his words were not credible. However, he did not want to deal with this kind of tattletale competition, as long as he did not screw up. By the way, how many people did Neverwinter increase this year? Did it meet the target? Although there was still about a month to go before the end of the year, with the arrival of winter, the immigration missions would gradually return to Neverwinter, and the number of immigrants would inevitably decrease. At the mention of this, Barav's face immediately bloomed into a smile. The wrinkles on his forehead were squeezed into a ravine, and the awkwardness from before also disappeared. Your Majesty, the City Hall has done the statistics. There are more than 80,000 people who moved here from all over the country, and 50% of them came here voluntarily. Including the natives in the border area and Border and Longsong of Border, the population of Neverwinter has reached 110,000. Roland was delighted. Half of them came voluntarily. Most of them came from the central and eastern region of the kingdom. It was not obvious in spring and summer, but in autumn, the proportion began to increase. At this rate, by next year, the traders who supported Timothy will probably not be able to sit still. This should be the effect of Theo spreading the news of the church's defeat to the eastern region. However, Roland still hoped that the nobles would persist for a while, so that he would have an excuse to eradicate them altogether and return a stable and orderly new kingdom to the people of the eastern region. Are the preparations for the winter ready? 2 months ago, the City Hall was ready, Barav replied with full confidence. The Ministry of Construction commissioned Miss Lotus to build a new batch of caves between the impassable mountain range and the Redwater River, in order to replace the shacks that were leaking. We've stockpiled a large amount of charcoal to make sure that everyone can get a basket. After Roland's repeated influence, City Hall now finally got used to no one will freeze to death in winter, no one will starve to death as the administrative goal, and implemented it in various decrees and measures. He nodded with gratification. Very good. Tell Scroll for me to not forget to educate her in winter. Yes, Your Majesty. In addition, I plan to launch a small-scale war without affecting the normal operation of Neverwinter, and the target is the southernmost region. When Iron Axe makes a specific combat plan, you can cooperate with him to mobilize all kinds of resources. Seeing that Barav was hesitant to speak, Roland walked to him and patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. After the director left, Nightingale appeared and asked confusedly, Is it okay? When he talked about Edith, It was obviously inconsistent with the actual situation. Even without using his ability, I can see it from his expression. If I reprimand him for this, I'm afraid he won't dare to directly suppress Edith anymore. Roland spread out his hands. In order to maintain the balance of City Hall, someone has to restrict the Pearl of the Northern region. At present, only Barav can do this. But why restrict her? If she has enough ability to manage City Hall, it won't be bad for you. Because. Roland opened his mouth, but found that he did not know what to say for a moment. That's right, why did he have to restrict Edith? Is he worried that she will be the only one in power? The possibility of this is very small. As long as I am the king, I can replace her with a word. Moreover, City Hall is not allowed to interfere with the army. Even if she controls all the administrative departments, she will not be a threat to the throne. In fact, when the City Hall staff are selected according to the recruitment notice and paid by the Treasury, the impact of replacing a manager has been minimized. Is he worried that she will deceive and tamper with the decree? At least not in Neverwinter. The effect of any decree will be transmitted to Roland's ears. Moreover, the city is not so big, so the transmission of information is almost real-time. Before coming to this world, what he hated the most was the way of checks and balances, especially in the workplace. When his boss regarded it as the way of the king, he sneered at it. He did not expect that after becoming the ruler, he would subconsciously think of this. If not for Nightingale's reminder, he might not have realized that he was gradually becoming the kind of person he hated. Power does need to be checked and balanced, but it should not be played by another person or a few people, but by policies, institutions, and laws. Without violating these frameworks, it is the right way to let his subordinates play to the fullest extent. Roland heaved a sigh of relief. He pursed his lips and was about to thank Nightingale when he found that her eyes were completely focused outside the window. "Look, it's snowing," she said softly. Roland turned around and found that countless white spots had quietly appeared in the gray sky. They were like light elves that were slowly floating down. Chapter 687. In the underground pivotal secret temple of the holy city of Hermes. Tayfun hadn't had a good night's sleep for more than 2 months. As long as he closed his eyes, his ears would echo with the pitiful cries of Archbishop Eyre. She had been dragged back by the Judgment Army. The enemy's weapon had smashed her abdomen and turned her intestines into a pot of porridge. Even with all kinds of herbs, the wound could not be prevented from worsening. After struggling for 2 days, she died in extreme pain. Tayfun had begun to doubt the strength of Grey Castle after the vanguard led by Soli Dal suffered a head-on attack. He had repeatedly asked His Holiness Maine to think twice before making a decision. He wanted to find out the details of this army as much as possible before making a decision. However, Maine was not swayed at all. He insisted that the main force should immediately attack the defense line of Grey Castle at the foot of Coldwind Ridge. He knew that the church might pay a heavy price, but he did not expect it to be so heavy. What was even more unexpected was that the most elite force of the church, the unstoppable God's Punishment Army, had been defeated. When he heard this unbelievable news, Tayfun spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted on the top of the Tower of Babel. However, this was not the only incredible thing. None of the pure witches had returned, and His Holiness Maine was nowhere to be found. It was not until he gritted his teeth and forced his way into the pivotal secret agency with a group of people that he learned an incredible piece of news from the guards. Maine was not the successor that O'Brien had chosen. It was Pure Witch Zero who had inherited the scepter and crown. The holy city had suddenly lost its pope. The only thing Tayfun could do was to keep this news underground forever. All the people he had brought with him had joined the pivotal secret temple, and he had become the temporary pope. In the following month, Tayfun spent all his time maintaining the order of the holy city and reading the secret history of the library. The secrets of the witches' hunting, the creation of the God's Punishment Army, the origin of the church, and the collapse of the witch empire were revealed to him little by little. The old bishop felt that his worldview had been turned upside down. No matter how hard he tried, he could not imagine that the church had been created by witches. Even the witch empire, which had influence all over the barbarian land, was unable to stop the demons' advance. Both the god's punishment army and the sigil of magic stones were the products left behind by the exiled witches. As he tossed and turned in the middle of the night, Tayfun's spirit was rapidly drained. 2 months felt like 2 years. The wrinkles on his face were as deep as the old bishop's, and his every movement was slow and sluggish, like an oil lamp that had run out of oil. However, he knew that he could not stop. Once he fell, the church would really be finished. A large number of judgment warriors were selected from the reserve team. The new archbishops and the middle-level believers who had been injured were appointed and dismissed as quickly as possible. Coupled with the call to live and die with the holy city, the precarious situation was temporarily stabilized. However, Tayfun knew that this was just a facade. The losses of the god's punishment army could not be quickly replenished, and the fighting capacity of the young warriors was far inferior to that of the older generation. In times of peace, he could slowly make up for it. However, now that the months of demons had arrived, and he could not stop the demonic beast's attack, it was impossible to rely on the power of the church alone. He had to unite the forces of the nobles in the kingdom of Wolfheart and the kingdom of Everwinter, just like how the 4 kingdoms united to guard the defense line in Hermes in the past. It was not easy to make the nobles who had joined the church obey his orders. Tayfun could even imagine that when the news of the church's defeat spread to the kingdom of Wolfheart and the kingdom of Everwinter, the nobles who still held the territory and the knight would once again jump out to oppose him. Therefore, when most of the troops of the Grey Castle withdrew from the northern region, he sent the last 100 gods' punishment warriors and the emissary delegation to the holy city to force the nobles to obey his orders. Now, both the old and the new holy cities were in an unprecedented state of weakness. The old bishop could only pray that the emissary delegation could bring reinforcements back to Hermes before the demonic beasts launched a large-scale attack. Tayfun rubbed the sore corners of his eyes and closed the ancient book that recorded the transformation ceremony of the gods' punishment warriors. When he was about to make himself a cup of winter flower tea to relieve his headache, he suddenly heard the sound of fighting outside the temple. He was so shocked that his hand trembled, and the teacup fell to the ground and immediately broke into pieces. How could there be intruders here? He walked to the window and looked down, only to see a group of figures moving under the dim light of the prism of the god's stone. They were constantly approaching the pivotal secret temple. Their speed was shockingly fast, and the imperial guards who fought with them fell almost instantly. Their armor seemed to be useless in front of their sharp blades, and the grayish-white steps were stained with blood that splattered everywhere. In the blink of an eye, the enemies had already pushed to the door of the temple. "Your Excellency, the pivotal secret temple is under attack. Please leave immediately." The door of the library was slammed open, and a captain of the Praetorian Guard anxiously walked in, followed by 10 gods' punishment warriors, who were obviously the Pope's personal bodyguards. How on earth did they get in? Tayfun roared in a hoarse voice. There were only 2 ways to go underground. One was to use the hanging cage to descend, and the other was to go through the secret fortress of the old holy city. Even the army of Grey Castle could not suddenly occupy the old and the new holy city without being noticed, unless they all had wings. The Imperial Guard captain looked very upset. The enemies came from the depths of the cave. "Your Excellency, please follow me immediately, or it will be too late." The depths of the cave? Tayfun asked incredulously. There was nothing there except for the big and small round holes. With great shock and confusion, he followed the Imperial Guard captain down the secret passage inside the wall and soon arrived at the bottom of the temple. "The hanging cage is unguarded, so it's probably not safe anymore. I'll escort you to the passage of the old holy city, and please take people back to the pivotal secret temple as soon as possible," the Imperial Guard captain said as he pushed open the movable stone door hidden in the corner. As soon as Tayfun stepped out of the secret passage, his heart instantly sank to the bottom. He saw more than 10 enemies standing there with swords, as if they already knew this was the exit of the secret passage. I thought I would never have the chance to set foot in the holy city again. I didn't expect the descendants who inherited the will of the Queen of Starfall Star to be so mediocre. A man in a strange armor that seemed to be pieced together by many pieces of metal came up to him. The mottled blade of his sword was faintly stained with blue blood. However, when Taefun noticed his face, he felt his blood freeze instantly. He had seen this man's face before. Ellington, the presiding judge of the 6th Advance Troop, had participated in the transformation ceremony of the God's Punishment Army 3 years ago. Before leaving, this brave and fearless warrior had personally said goodbye to him. An indescribable chill crawled up the old bishop's spine and into his mind. The strange fear made him almost unable to control his tongue. Chapter 688. Monster? The Scourge sneered. Weren't you the ones who created this body? You transformed it with witch blood and God's stone of retaliation into a transcendent warrior. Unfortunately, due to the lack of a key step, the transcendent warrior became a defective product without a soul. You have pinned your hopes on this shell of strength to defeat the devil, and now you call the finished product a monster? A real, finished product? Taefun's heart was filled with astonishment. The production method of the God's Punishment Army was the church's core secret, but it seemed that the other party not only knew about it, but also knew more about it than he did. Attack at will and kill them, the Chief Justice shouted. 10 God's Punishment warriors swarmed over the Archbishop at an extremely fast speed and rushed toward the enemy. However, their opponents were also Scourge, and they were even stronger than them. Although the number of Scourge and the Scourge were similar, the Scourge and the Scourge used different tactics to attack the Scourge. When a Scourge was in a stalemate with the enemy, the other Scourge would launch a sneak attack from behind. Even Taefun could see that the right thing to do at this moment was to withdraw his sword and retreat. However, the Chief Justice could not control the 10 Scourge at the same time. Once the Scourge and the Scourge were in a stalemate, the disadvantage of the God's Punishment Army would become obvious. Even a transcendent warrior would lose his ability to fight once he was cut in half. Soon, all 10 Scourge fell, while the Scourge remained unscathed. Ellington, the leader of the group, easily cut down the Chief Justice. He raised his sword and placed it on the shoulder of the old Archbishop, who could no longer move. The blue blood of the Chief Justice mixed with the scarlet blood of the Chief Justice and dripped into Ellington's collar along the blade. "You can't kill me," Taefun said in a trembling voice. "If I die, the holy city will completely collapse. Who will stop the demonic beasts from wreaking havoc? If they break through the defense line of Hermes, I'm afraid the 4 kingdoms will fall into ruin? You can use these words to deceive those ignorant believers outside, but you'd better save your energy in front of me. We all know what the demonic beasts are looking for. If you hadn't brought them here, how could those brainless idiots have been so eager to dive into this snow trap during the months of demons, when the magic power is at its peak? I don't understand you. What? It seems like you haven't even seen the relic before." Scourge, who had the same face as Ellington, shrugged. "What a pity." Taefun was just about to say something when he suddenly felt a chill on his neck. A numbness and coldness instantly took over his consciousness. Elena kicked the old man's head into the air. Watching the old man's body fall down slowly, she withdrew her sword in satisfaction. "Let's go. It's time to get down to business." "Wait, you're hurt." Someone pulled her from behind. "Stop the bleeding first, or your body will lose control." "Where is the wound?" "There's a crack in your waist. You have to take off your armor." "This damned body doesn't feel anything at all." Elena cursed. She untied the 2 pieces of armor fixed on the front and the back, revealing her strong upper body. "Look at this body. It's worth at least 50 golden dragon in tequila." Someone interrupted. "Honestly, have you ever looked in the mirror?" "Come on, Betty. What's the difference between fantasy and torture?" The person who was helping Elena to stop the bleeding interrupted. "I don't even dare to recall the days in tequila. Every time I think of my life at that time, it's no different from being imprisoned in a cage of nothingness. Carol's right. Someone immediately agreed. If anyone can give me a taste of a man again, I'll do anything to marry him. No, I'll even worship him as my master. A man? I'll be satisfied as long as I can eat a delicious buttered steak. I want to bask in the sun. Damn it. Who brought up this topic? Miss Betty. I just said it casually. I also wanted this body in the beginning. Stop. Elena roared angrily. The others are still waiting for us at the top of the tower. Concentrate. Don't forget the purpose of our trip. After Carol finished treating the wound, she took the lead and went into the secret passage. Following the narrow stone steps, they came to the library. Another group of witches was already waiting in the room, although they all looked like God's punishment army. They were the last remaining witnesses of the union. Elena sighed in her heart. Lady Natalia, have you seen this? She thought. We won in the end. Have you found the location of the relic? The same place. Zoe, the leader of the other team, came up. The decorations here are exactly the same as in the holy city of Tequila. By the way, why did it take you so long? You didn't let anyone go, did you? Of course, everything went well. Elena coughed twice. Then, according to the agreement, we'll touch the relic together. She nodded. In that case, let's start. The relic of the gods was the root of the battle of divine will and the Union's top secret. In fact, before the fall of the Witch Empire, they did not know the existence of the relic. It was not until they hid in the underground maze and the original order was completely disintegrated that the survivors learned everything from the three chiefs. From then on, there was no hierarchy among the witches. Everyone was an equal individual. In order to find a way to resist the demons, all the survivors were equally important. Elena's heart beat faster when she thought that she was about to touch the relic. She knew it was just an illusion. She followed Zoe into a secret door hidden behind a bookcase and went all the way up to the top of the library. At the end of the passage was a narrow room without windows. There was nothing except the magic stone emitting a faint blue light above the ceiling. Is this the prayer room that Pasha mentioned? That's right. Zoe took out an iron hammer and smashed it hard on the wall. With a muffled sound, there was only a shallow white spot left on the wall. Looks like it's not here. She changed her position and continued to swing the iron hammer. After several attempts, a crack appeared on the wall facing the entrance. Found it. Help me. Elena took out her long sword and walked up to the wall. With one hammer and the other pry, she soon tore open a gap that was half the height of a person. Behind the wall was not the deep underground cave where the pivotal secret temple was located, but an even narrower secret chamber. From the broken section of the wall, it could be seen that it was almost half the width of an arm. Both sides of the wall were covered with thick mortar. It was impossible to tell the difference by ordinary knocking methods. Chapter 689. It was a transparent crimson crystal, very similar to the magic core in the ruins of the maze. It was also a vertical spindle. However, it was much smaller, only about half the height of a person. However, when Elena entered the secret chamber, she found that the back of the relic had changed its shape from a soft and smooth arc to a sharp right angle. Looking down from the top of the relic, it looked like a quarter of a circle that had been cut by a cross. Like the magic core, it was floating in the air without any support, which was enough to prove its extraordinariness. Is this the thing that decides the fate of human beings? Elena was full of doubts, but at the same time, she felt indignant towards the gods. According to Pasha, no one knew how the relic appeared in front of people. From the moment it appeared, it had been firmly connected with the fate of human beings. If it was lost, everyone, including witches and common people, would die instantly. In order to protect the relic, countless people had fought bloody battles and died on the battlefield against the demons. However, the gods had never given them any instructions, as if they were just silently enjoying everything until the final winner was born. This kind of trick was disgusting. Are you ready? Zoe asked. When moving the relic, don't empty your mind, and don't try to connect with the gods. Do you remember what Pasha told us? Don't worry. I remember. Elena nodded. I'll count to 3. What do you think? Pasha made a gesture of yes. 3, 2, 1. The two held the relic and walked out slowly. Although it could float in the air, it was not as light as a goose feather. When Elena touched it, she felt her arms sink. Even though she was a member of the God's Punishment Army, she still felt very tired. If Pasha had not told her, she would have thought that she had regained her senses that she had lost for hundreds of years. This feeling of fatigue was spiritual. The relic was trying to connect with them. Elena shook her head. She wanted to get rid of the distracting thoughts, but she suddenly realized that she could not empty her mind. In this case, she had to let her imagination run wild. What should she think about? A man, or delicious food, or a soft bed? What you want is feeling. A voice suddenly crept into her mind. Comfort, pleasure, pain, coldness, and heat. And I can give you these. Relax your mind and look at me. What are you looking at? No, that's not right. Elena's eyes widened. Who's talking? Could it be the relic itself? She turned to look at Zoe, only to find that the latter's eyes had already lost their luster, like a shell without a soul. Damn it, what was going on? Pasha didn't say that such an accident would happen. Don't worry, she's just following her heart's desire and fusing with me. Let her out. I can't do it. Or you can come in and take her out. The voice gradually changed from a hoarse voice to a soft female voice. Elena couldn't even tell whether the relic was talking to her or she was talking to herself. Take her out? For a moment, Pasha's advice flashed through her mind. Never connect with the gods. But she couldn't just watch Zoe disappear. A body that had completely lost its soul couldn't stay active for long. She had to pull Zoe back. Just look at the relic? Elena took a deep breath and stared at the crimson crystal. The latter's outline twisted, and then she was shrouded in darkness. When her sight returned to normal, she found that the world around her had completely changed. It was an indescribably spacious hall, infinitely high and infinitely far. The dome was a deep starry sky and a huge crimson moon. The magic power on the surface of the crimson moon was like boiling lava. For huge paintings fell quietly, surrounding her in the center. The hall, the crimson moon, and the paintings all gave people a sense of extreme magnificence. Although she had heard of such an incredible scene from Pasha, it was the first time for Elena to see it with her own eyes. Zoe, where are you? She shouted. But no one answered her. There was nothing in the hall except the paintings. She forced herself to calm down and looked at the paintings. However, after only one glance, Elena felt cold sweat on her back. Someone was also watching her in the paintings. One of them was a demon in exquisite armor. Its pupils were shining with terrifying red light. It stood up from the throne and walked toward her step by step. The other painting was of a huge eyeball. What was terrifying was that there wasn't only one pupil in the eyeball. Instead, there were several pupils that bloomed at the same time in a triangular formation. Every single one of them was like a big mouth that was about to devour someone. She couldn't help but take 2 steps back. She encouraged herself in her heart. It's just a moving painting. There's nothing to be afraid of. However, this thought only lasted for less than a breath's time. Suddenly, 6 or 7 black tentacles stretched out of the 2 paintings and lunged at her. At the front of each tentacle, there was a small palm. Before Elena could react, she was caught red-handed. The tentacles dragged her back and forth, refusing to give in to each other, as if she were a rare trophy. Hanging between the 2 paintings, Elena felt that her body was about to be torn apart. The unbearable pain made her scream out loud. Wait, pain? Not until then did she realize that she had returned to the appearance of a witch. Unexpectedly, the last experience before death was to be pulled in half. Elena felt the sharp pain in her mind and her consciousness became blurred. That's good. At least I don't have to die empty-handed as a god's punishment warrior. However, the scene in the 3rd painting seemed to be a little different. She saw the body of the god's punishment warrior she had chosen fell on the ground and Zoe was dragging her to the secret door. What happened? Didn't I merge with the relic at all? At this moment, the hall suddenly fell apart. The crimson moon, the painting, and the tentacles all disappeared without a trace. The long-lost pain also stopped. Elena blinked her eyes and realized that she was back in the library. Is this a dream? Dream. You really piss me off. Zoe gnashed her teeth. What did Pasha tell you before? Don't connect with God. I clearly emphasized it to you in the beginning. But I saw you lose your mind. I also saw you being swallowed by the relic. She interrupted angrily. That's just an illusion created by God. If I hadn't dragged you out of the room, I'm afraid you would have been trapped in there forever. Elena could not help but think of the demon and the giant eye in the huge painting, as well as the tentacles. Were they all illusions created by God? She vaguely felt that something was wrong. Pasha had never really touched the relic, so it was normal that she did not mention it. However, she had personally felt everything shown in the relic. It was not an illusion at all, and it had nothing to do with God. The moment she noticed the person in the painting also noticed her. What should we do next? Betty interrupted. Only in this way could she make friends with more witches and find the chosen one that Pasha had mentioned. It's time to change the dressing. Broken Sword walked to the bedside with the earthen jar. It may be a little painful. It's better to close your eyes. I can bear it. You change it. Number 76 clenched her teeth and pretended to be strong. In fact, if she did not stare at Broken Sword, she would not know whether Broken Sword had started to change the dressing or not. In that case, how could she cooperate with Broken Sword? The decocted herbs were like a mass of sticky mud. Judging from the looks of Amy and Broken Sword, the smell of the mud must not be very pleasant. It was really hard for them to insist on applying this stuff all over her wounds in the narrow and enclosed cabin. After a while, number 76 let out a long sigh and lay back on the pillow, sweating profusely. By increasing her heartbeat, she could raise her body temperature, speed up her blood flow, and secrete sweat at the same time. Coupled with her slightly trembling limbs and expression, no one could tell that she was faking. As for whether the common people's formula was effective or not, it was not within her consideration. Thank you, number 76 said softly after a long time. No, this is what we should do. Amy picked up a towel and wiped the sweat on her forehead. We should thank you. Amy is right, Broken Sword comforted her. Have a good rest. When we arrive at Neverwinter, everything will be better. After the two left, number 76 pressed the colorful magic stone ring hidden in her chest and sighed slightly. Only by finding the chosen one could everything really get better. If they could not resist the demons, everyone would die. No one could escape from the battle of divine will, which would decide their fate. However, it was still unknown whether the chosen one existed or not. According to the remaining documents in the ruins of the maze, magic power was a gift from the gods to the extraordinary. Every creature that could use magic power must have a key that could open the source of magic power. This explained why magic power was everywhere, but only a few people could use it. But everyone's key is different. Some witches could set off storms and bring people back to life, while others could only heat a bowl or two of oatmeal or mend torn clothes. They were all awakened witches, but why was there such a huge gap between them? This question had troubled the Union for hundreds of years. It was not until further research on the records in the ruins did the surviving witches get a vague explanation. It was the key itself that caused all this. It had nothing to do with the capacity of magic power, but involved the essence of magic power. Every time a witch used her ability, she would transform part of the magic power into reality. This process was extremely complicated and could not be undertaken by witches, so the gods took the corresponding transformation steps. Not every witch could be equally favored by the gods, so some transformation was very simple, while others were very complicated. In other words, the complexity of the key determined the upper limit of a witch's ability. At first, number 76 found it hard to understand this statement until Pasha explained it with a simple example: magic stone. Even if their own magic cyclone remained the same, Witches could still display a variety of effects through the magic stone, which showed that there was no difference in magic itself. Whether it was an extraordinary or a senior witch, they all used the same kind of power. In this case, if there was a kind of universal magic stone that could fulfill any wish, could it easily reverse the disadvantage of witches against the demons? The magic core was such a mechanism. It attempted to simulate the magic cyclone and directly draw power from the gods. In a sense, it could be seen as an artificial ultimate magic stone. The sigil that only involved the size of the magic power was like a simple and crude toy in front of it. However, experiments showed that the gods would not give the key to inanimate objects. To activate it, a witch with a matching key was needed. Chapter 691. With the help of the colorful magic stone ring, number 76 could observe the witches' conversation with God when they used their magic power. It was like a faint orange light, connecting the witches with the vast sky. In fact, not only witches, but also demons and some hybrid demonic beasts should have the same orange light if the historical records were correct. God did not care about the world. Every time she thought of this, she would feel extremely worried. Compared with the endless number of demons, witches could not be regarded as a powerful group. They could not be inherited or cultivated, and they could only awaken by luck. Moreover, their magic power was far less than that of their enemies. Fortunately, the key was not something destined to be. They could change the key itself by awakening at a higher level, so as to obtain more power from God. Since leaving the Kingdom of Dawn, number 76 had observed the orange light of Amy, Annie, and Hero. Among the three, Hero was the strongest and Annie the weakest, but overall, there was not much difference. They were all about the thickness of a finger, which was far from the requirement of activating the instrument of divine retribution. She had reason to believe that the chosen one must be a senior witch. Suddenly, the cabin door was pushed open, and Yorko, the ambassador of Grey Castle, came in. He raised his eyebrows and walked to the bedside. The smell of this herb is even worse than a latrine pit. How did they use such a smelly thing as medicine? Maybe the crew thought that the demonic plague would also retreat in the face of this stench. Number 76 smiled reluctantly. But my body is really much better. At least the scratches have formed scabs. Of course, it was not the medicine, but the extraordinary bodies of the gods' punishment army. If it doesn't work, I'll definitely press their heads into the latrine pit so that they can smell the medicine I made. Yorko picked a bench and sat down. Poor sailors, she said softly. I heard from Amy that you asked them if there was any special prescription. Ahem, it's a felony to deceive the nobles. They asked for it. The ambassador spread out his hands. If you really can't answer, you can say that you take it with hot water and honey. Even if it doesn't cure the wound, at least the patient can leave with a satisfied smile. I'm not talking about you. Number 76 could not help but raise the corner of her mouth. During the long voyage, the ambassador would come to visit her once a day. Although the time was short, they had a pleasant conversation. She found that Yorko might be a mortal without any good points, but he was more humorous than most of the nobles when it came to women. Even in Tequila, he should not be a nobody. Since she had lost most of her senses, verbal communication was one of the few pleasurable pastimes she had. After chatting idly for a while, the man uncharacteristically fell silent. No. 76 thought for a while, propped herself up with one hand and asked tentatively, Your Excellency, do you need me to serve you? Although my body is not very agile, but I've told you many times, you're no longer my maid. Don't mention serving anyone you meet. You're now a free citizen of Grey Castle, understand? Not to mention you're still injured. I'm not one of those upper-class nobles with sick hobbies. Then do you have something to tell me? Hearing this, Yorko's expression changed slightly. He cleared his throat and said, I do have a question to ask you. After arriving at the new King's City, what do you plan to do in the future? Well, go to a tavern to be a maid? Or a casino? Number 76 tilted her head and said, If the witches can really cure this body. As long as she could stay in Neverwinter, She did not mind doing anything. She had already established a relationship with the witches of the Kingdom of Dawn, and sooner or later she would get to know other members of the Witch Union. You should do something else, Yurko advised. Since you've already come out, don't go back to the old way. But black money didn't teach me anything other than serving men. Even if I want to be a guard, my limbs won't be as agile as before after I've reattached them. Neverwinter will teach you. I heard from His Majesty that his city can provide a formal job for everyone. Yurko paused for a moment. If you encounter any difficulties, you can come to me at any time, as long as I haven't left the Western region. Did he hesitate for so long just to say this? Number 76 could not help feeling a little emotional. When she was in the Kingdom of Dawn, she clearly knew how much the ambassador hated trouble. It was probably very difficult for him to make such a promise. I'll try. She lowered her head and said, "Thank you." 4 days later, the sailor brought good news. They had finally arrived at the new city in the western region of Grey Castle, Neverwinter. All the witches gathered in number 76's room and waited anxiously for further instructions. Among them, Annie was the most anxious. From time to time, she opened the window and glanced at the dock. If she found anything wrong, she would take everyone and jump into the cold river without hesitation. The first thing number 76 felt was the noise. The high-pitched horn sounded continuously, and the river splashed against the side of the ship, as if there were countless ships passing in front and behind them. It was the months of demons. How could the dock be as busy as midsummer? Unfortunately, she could not move at the moment and could not see the scene outside the window. "Sister Annie, why can't I see any sails on those ships?" Amy asked in surprise. "Maybe some sailors are paddling under the deck." Annie suddenly stopped and leaned sideways to the window. "Quiet. Someone is coming." "Are there many people?" Broken Sword asked nervously. "Only 4 people. They don't look like they're here to catch us." Annie frowned. "And they're all women. All witches?" Amy stood up at once. "I knew Mr. Ambassador didn't lie to us. The members of the Bloodfang Association are also witches, but they're not our kind," she said in a low voice. "Anyway, just follow my eyes and gestures as before." "Okay." Everyone nodded in unison. Soon, the door of the cabin was knocked. The 4 people mentioned by Annie walked into the room one by one. The red-haired woman, who was the leader, said with a smile, "Welcome to Neverwinter, sisters from afar." Annie was stunned, probably because she did not expect the other party to be so enthusiastic. Even number 76 was quite surprised. Even in the tequila, where witches held great power, they would not welcome new awakened witches so casually. Didn't they distinguish the witches' abilities first? Comparing a combat witch to a non-combat witch was a very rude thing to do. Chapter 692. Number 76 pretended to be a little timid and slightly turned her head away. If she wanted to establish a relationship with the Witch Union, she would definitely be investigated by them. She was prepared for this. No one knew the abilities of witches better than the Union. It was normal for a large organization to have such investigative means as perception magic and stone of insight. If she could not even hide this from them, she would not have come all the way to the western region of Grey Castle. Different from the God's Punishment Army who had lost their mind, she could easily control all parts of her body in her complete body. She could also control the withdrawal and release of the anti-magic field. Any witch could master this skill after 2 or 3 years of practice. As long as she did not trigger the magic power to distort the barrier, she looked no different from an ordinary person. After all, Scourge's anti-magic field and blue blood were caused by magic power. Without consciousness, he was like a beast and could only rely on the instinct of a transformed person to fight. Naturally, he did not know how to use the omnipresent magic power. When the witch's soul entered her body could be considered to be fully utilized. Although she could no longer condense magic cyclones like before, and her fighting instincts would also disappear completely, her immortal soul could, through years and years of training, make her possess strength and skills not inferior to that of an extraordinary. Aren't you going to ask us about our abilities first? Annie asked after a while. It was obvious that she was on high alert. Number 76 was also interested in this question. Along the way, she had a deeper understanding of the experience of Annie and her team. She heard that due to the lack of ability, this witch was rejected by an organization that only accepted combat witches and was almost sold to the nobles by them. Number 76 could understand why the combat witches were held in such high regard, especially when the wild witches were being suppressed by Starfall City. It was necessary for them to protect themselves and the organization to maintain their continuity. But it could also be seen that these witches' understanding of magic power was still at the initial level. Because of the existence of high awakening, some non-combat witches could get earth-shaking changes after promotion. Their seemingly useless abilities could undergo transcendental qualitative changes. Therefore, the Bloodfang Association not only refused to take in non-combat witches, but also sold them to the nobles, which was extremely stupid. But it was strange to say that she didn't care about her ability at all. It could be said that she had gone from one extreme to the other. After all, the probability of a high-level awakening was always small. There were many witches who couldn't be promoted in their lifetime, not to mention that combat witches also had the opportunity to be promoted. Therefore, in any case, it was a fact that combat witches had a higher status. Their practice of treating all witches equally was inconceivable to number 76. It was no wonder that Annie was so wary. The ability test is usually scheduled for 3 days later, the red-haired witch said with a soft smile. After all, you've been rushing all the way and must be exhausted. It's more accurate to wait until you've had enough rest before taking the test. What do you think? By the way, I'm Vendi, the person in charge of the Witch Union. If you have any questions in the future, you can ask me. Annie's expression still didn't relax. What if the test results show that our abilities are useless? Both His Majesty and the Witch Union agree that there is no useless ability. The witch who called herself Vendi replied gently. I know what you're worried about. This is also the process that most witches will go through when they join Neverwinter. In fact, the ability test is just to let His Majesty know more about you. It doesn't mean that you have to become a member of the Union. Annie was stunned. What do you mean? It means that even if you don't want to serve His Majesty, you can still live like ordinary people in this city. This sentence made number 70 SAX's heart skip a beat. She knew that the emergence of a high level which largely depended on a relaxed environment. For example, in Tequila, every witch could use her ability at will, and those with a little potential would be specially trained by the Union. The more the holy city was dominated by witches, the more high-level witches would be promoted. How could a witch, who had to flee from place to place and lived in constant fear, who rarely had the chance to practice her abilities, be promoted? If what Vendi said was true, that Neverwinter could allow witches to live a free and stable life, in a sense, it had met the conditions for the birth of high-level witches. Maybe they don't have the chosen one now, but what about a few years later? Number 76 thought. Maybe it would be best to find a chance to talk to the Witch Union in private and develop them into a branch of the Union. We don't have to serve the king? Annie seemed to be unable to believe her ears. Yes, the Witch Union won't force any of our sisters to sign a contract. It's just that becoming a member of the Union will give us a lot of benefits and the work will be easy, so everyone has joined this big family. I'm sorry, Lady Vendi. Broken Sword said, can you tell us what a witch's job is? Don't call me lady. Vendi shook her head with a smile. We're sisters, aren't we? As for the job, it's related to one's own ability. For example, Miss Evelyn, who can make good wine, has opened a winery in the city. Miss Mystery Moon, who can make objects magnetic, is responsible for the lighting of all the factories. And Miss Nana Pine, her outstanding healing ability has made her the angel girl of Neverwinter. I heard from Mr. Ambassador that you need healers, right? Number 76 could not help but frown. Don't they care about the difference between witches' abilities? How did the King of Grey Castle defeat the God's Punishment Army of the Church? Can you really cure heroes' feet? Amy's voice suddenly became excited. We'll know after Nana tries it. Vendi nodded to the blonde witch. But before that, can you introduce your origins and names? Number 76 did not care whether she could be cured or not. Her attention was focused on the four witches. The colorful magic stone on her chest was slightly hot, which proved that someone was using magic power. She realized that the examination had begun. From Annie to Hero, everyone gave a brief account of their past. During this period, Vendi also asked several questions, and an older black-haired witch recorded the content in the handbook. During this period, the magic stone was kept at the same temperature. When the questioning was over, Vendi looked at number 76. You're not a witch? She's our friend, Amy said. If she hadn't stalled the pursuers of the Kingdom of Dawn, we would have been caught and sent back to the dungeon. I used to be a guide, or a maid, of the underground exhibition in the City of Glow. The Lord Emissary bought me from the Chamber of Commerce. Number 76 slowly said the pretext she had prepared. She had faintly sensed the way of the examination. Those questions were not asked casually, but had a clear purpose and an answer that could not be evaded. Some of them might be able to tell the lie. Number 76 was not worried about this. She could precisely control every part of her body and could also temporarily cut off the connection with a certain part. The subtle changes when lying did not exist for her. Unless the other party could directly invade her brain, her words would be impeccable. Her guess was proven right. After the answer, Vendi did not show any abnormality. I see. Thank you for saving them. If you have nowhere else to go, you might as well live with them in the Foreign Affairs building. Thank you, number 76 said gratefully. Chapter 693. Number 76 was a little surprised by her words. It seems that there is more than one examiner? However, 400 years of training had taught her how to hide her emotions. Moreover, as long as she thought of something, her body would be separated from her consciousness. It was difficult to make her reveal her flaws only by sudden questioning. Number 76 pretended to be surprised at first, and then reluctantly took out the ring from her robe. After a long hesitation, she said, I stole it from Black Money. At the same time, her evaluation of the witch union rose to another level. At first, she thought that their welcome was too casual, but now it seemed that was not the case. One witch could detect lies, and the other one had the ability to see through things. This was already considered prudent enough. Black Money. The witch with long green hair picked up the ring in her hand and carefully looked at it for a while. This seems to be a magic stone, but it doesn't look the same. Number 76 suddenly frowned in her heart. They even know about the existence of magic stones? This is a little troublesome. Although the way to activate it is not the same as ordinary magic stones, as long as you ponder it for a while, you will find its function sooner or later. She had to distract their attention. She did not have another magic stone. Black Money is the underground exhibition I used to stay in. There are often auctions of things excavated from ancient ruins. The boss often said that they have incredible power. The more novel something is, the more it will be popular among the buyers. In addition, they occasionally auction. Auction? What? Vendi asked. Auction witches, number 76 said in a low voice. Hearing this, undisguised anger appeared on the faces of the four witches, and they paid less attention to the ring. Obviously, they abhorred the sale of witches as slaves, which indirectly showed that the witch organization in Grey Castle would not agree with the practice of Starfall City. Number 76 didn't lie. I was almost auctioned to a noble by Black Money, Amy echoed. Fortunately, Mr. Ambassador saved me. They will get what they deserve sooner or later, the blonde witch said coldly. That ring. Number 76 pretended to be timid. Although Miss Agatha will definitely be very interested in this item, let's talk about it after you familiarize yourself with Neverwinter. The green-haired witch shrugged and did not intend to keep it for herself. She put the ring back into Agatha's hand. Number 76 was slightly stunned. Agatha? This name sounded quite familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. I promise you won't encounter such a thing again. Vendi comforted them. No one in Neverwinter will dare to do anything to you. His Majesty firmly believes that the era of witches and ordinary people living together will come soon. At that time, not only in the western region of Grey Castle, but also in the whole kingdom, no one will regard you as the devil's minions. Will there really be such a day? Broken Sword asked doubtfully. Of course, the Witch Union was established for this purpose. Vendi smiled. Anyway, let me take you to a place to rest first. Number 76 was slowly moved to a stretcher and was carried out of the cabin by the sailors. The moment she left the sailboat, she finally saw the full view of the dock. The heavy snow did not make the city quiet. Dozens of people lined up along the dock, sweeping the snow on the ground. Further away were the strange cargo ships that docked to unload cargo. Just as Amy had said, they did not have tall masts and sails, but they could come and go freely in the river. Those ships don't seem to have oars. And why do they look like they are made of stone? The witches whispered to each other, and number 76 clearly saw a proud smile on Vendi's face. Even through the wind and snow, the smile still contained warmth. However, this was not the only place that greatly surprised number 76. As they entered the city, the scene of Neverwinter gradually appeared in front of her. This new king city was different from the mortal cities or the holy city of the Union that she had seen. The wide and solid streets were as straight as a black vertical line. The snowflakes that kept falling did not affect the traffic at all. The accumulated snow was piled on both sides of the road in an orderly manner, looking like small white mounds of dirt. Apparently, the big trees planted for the sake of beauty were neatly arranged, and colorful ribbons were hung on the bare trunks. She could imagine that in midsummer, the city should be green like a carpet, and the interlaced branches above her head formed a natural sunshade. Square brick houses stood side by side, almost of the same size. Apart from that, number 76 did not see a single bungalow or shabby thatched hut. Although it was already the months of demons, there were still many figures walking in the snow in the city. Many people would stop and nod to greet the black-haired witch when they passed by them. Their expressions were sincere and enthusiastic, not at all like they were forced to do so due to the oppression of power. This was what she cared about the most. This was the first time that she had witnessed witches and mortals coexisting as equals. Although she had heard that witches and mortals had a period of non-interference during the first battle of divine will, that was, after all, something that happened 800 or 900 years ago. Moreover, this city seemed to be going one step further. Instead of living separately, they were integrated into one. His Majesty believes that the era of witches and mortals living together will soon come. Number 76 suddenly recalled Vendi's words in her mind. It turned out that it was not a joke. In Neverwinter, it seemed to be coming true. During the voyage of more than a month, number 76 had a certain understanding of Prince Roland of Grey Castle. From an unknown border lord to the king of a country, if it was just a low-level war between mortals in the beginning, then in the end, he defeated the church which had many gods' punishment army, which might prove his strength. Was all this related to the phenomenon in front of her? Number 76 almost wanted to sit up and take a closer look at the city if she did not have to pretend to be sick. According to Pasha, they would have to deal with mortals sooner or later. In order to defeat the demons, they could temporarily cover up the past of the Union. After all, they were facing a formidable enemy and could not easily leave the ruins of the maze. It was not easy to reverse the mess left by Starfall City in a short time. As long as the witches could survive, one day they would be able to restore the glory of Tequila. On this point, Lady Akasri and Lady Natalia had the same opinion. After arriving at the messenger's building, number 76 and Hero were carried back to the bed. The other three witches gathered around the blazing fireplace and excitedly talked about what they had seen and heard along the way. There was no doubt that Neverwinter had left a deep impression on them in such a short time. After a while, Vendi came into the room with a little girl. This is Nana. Whether it's a new injury or an old one, she can heal them all. Even a broken leg? Amy could not wait to run to the bed and uncovered the cotton blanket covering Hero. The little girl stretched out her hand to try and slowly shook her head. Unless you still keep her broken leg. If the whole limb is lost, I can only reattach it, but I can't regenerate it. Are you saying that we have to find her 2 new legs? Chapter 694. Nana. Vendi glanced at her reproachfully. I'm telling the truth. Not only did I reconnect the severed limbs, His Majesty also asked me to do many experiments, such as swapping the wings of a rooster and a gray eagle to see if the rooster could also fly. Also, the limbs of frogs and mice, the bodies of cows and sheep. The little girl said while counting on her fingers. The 4 witches sucked in a breath of cold air. Number 76, however, was very interested in her words. To fully study the mystery of the ability, instead of fearing and avoiding it, was obviously the style of a member of the Quest Society. No wonder His Majesty was willing to accept witches. From this point alone, at least he was not a stubborn and conservative person. What's the result? She could not help asking. Most of them failed at first, but after His Majesty asked Lily to join the experiment, the success rate increased a lot. But after the reconnection, the limbs basically lost their function, so I had to reconnect them again. Nana paused. I forgot to tell you, these are all alien connections. If it's the same kind of animal after the treatment, almost no difference can be seen. So if you have 2 legs, Ahem, please don't mind. Vendi covered the little girl's mouth. As for the leg, we'll find a way to solve it. Although it will take some time, the hero will be able to stand up one day. You can rest assured. The witches looked at each other and did not dare to speak for a while. Anyway, cure your friend's injury first. Vendi did not know whether to laugh or cry. She patted Nana's head and said, Go. Number 76 hurriedly put on a complex expression, which was 30% expectation and 70% fear. She watched the little girl walk to her side and press her hands on the broken leg. The ring on her chest heated up again. She suddenly realized that she had encountered a troublesome problem. That was, what kind of expression should she show when receiving treatment? Number 76 did not know how her body would feel when healing the broken bones and joints with magic power. Would it be painful or relaxing? Or would there be no feeling at all? Should she scream or gritted her teeth and moan? Before she could think of an answer, the little girl withdrew her hands. Your leg is healed. Next is your arm. She tried to lift the broken leg and found that it could move freely. After a while, the twisted elbow also returned to normal. Your spirit is very good. Nana looked at her strangely. Most people, after recovering from a serious injury, will fall into a deep sleep, not even yawning. You are the first. Number 76's heart sank. She pretended to be at a loss and replied, I just. But sleeping is just a natural reaction of the body. There won't be any harm even if you wake him up immediately. You don't have to worry. If you haven't been active for a long time, you might not be used to it at first, but you'll be fine after 2 days. Is that so? Thank you. Fortunately, the blonde witch who served as the examiner was not here. Number 76 secretly glanced at Vendi and found that Vendi was not paying attention to her but was chatting with Hiro. She was slightly relieved. Are you really better? Aimi asked with concern. Number 76 raised her broken right hand and waved at her. Yes, I've recovered. Miss Nana's ability is really incredible. Seeing this scene, the worries in the eyes of the other witches dissipated a lot. Amy gritted her teeth and walked to Wendy's side. She pulled her sleeve and said, Please use my leg to heal Hiro. What? Vendi was obviously stunned. My ability is self-healing. If I cut off my legs, they might grow back. No, Amy, don't. Hiro hurriedly said, You've suffered minor injuries before. What if they can't grow back? I'm willing to try, she insisted. Annie, persuade her. Amy, don't say any more. Even if you help Hiro stand up, she will feel uncomfortable for a long time. But, well, you don't have to fight, Nana suddenly said. Maybe there is another way to cure her legs. Everyone turned to look at her in unison. I'm 16 years old this year and will be an adult in 2 years. After adulthood, my ability will be greatly strengthened. Maybe I can directly regrow the whole severed limb. She pursed her lips. There's also ability evolution. If you can achieve the level of Sister Anna and Sister Leaf, maybe you can grow 2 more legs. Ability evolution? What's that? AI Mi's eyes widened. It's when the magic power in the body condenses and becomes a new appearance. Haven't you seen it? Nana said proudly. Anyway, it's very powerful. As long as you study hard, you will also have the opportunity to evolve new abilities. Listening to the little girl's excited narration, number 76 was shocked. If she understood correctly, the evolution mentioned by Nana was higher awakening. But she also felt like she was listening to a fairy tale. There were several senior witches in the Witch Union, and all of them appeared in the last 2 years? How could this be possible? Senior witches were not like wheat planted in the farmland, where the number of seeds sown would be the same. Every promoted awakened was a valuable asset of the Union. Talent, diligence, and luck were indispensable. Even number 76 was just an ordinary combat which before she was transformed into Scourge. Why did Nana think that most people could evolve? As long as they studied hard, they could evolve new abilities. This kind of talk was simply nonsense. Although the more experiences one had, the more knowledge one had, and the more likely one was to have an epiphany, it was only a 1 in 1,000 chance. If it was so simple, how could the Union encounter a low period in which no one had advanced for nearly 100 years, and become exhausted in the second half of the Battle of Divine Will? But in front of a group of wild witches who had never even heard of higher awakening, was it necessary for Nana to lie? If it were not for her identity as an ordinary person, she really wanted to ask the little girl the truth on behalf of Annie and the others. At least it was certain that there were senior witches in the Witch Union, otherwise Nana would not have made such a clear and logical statement. But the number of senior witches should be an exaggeration, or some powerful people were the higher-ups of the Union and had little contact with the new witches, so the little girl, who should have just awakened, mistook some of the higher-ups for promoted witches. Thinking of this, number 76 felt very excited. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.